Ready to roll, Devin?
I'm here. Hit it.
Cool. Let's do it.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I just sat down a second ago, so let's roll.
Hey, we're up. Here we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Buckeye Huddle postgame presented. The Buckeye postgame huddle presented by BuckeyeHuddle.com. Mark Givler here, Devin Radcliffe, still gathering ourselves after that just amazing game in so many ways. A great win for Ohio State, a crazy game that so different from Oregon in so many ways, but also so similar to Oregon in that I think whoever lost this game was going to be like, what in the world? How did we let these opportunities go? There were missed opportunities on both sides, a lot of them by the Buckeyes, especially in the first half. But they finished, and the defense gets a huge stop. The offense puts together a couple of really impressive second half drives. The last two times they touched the football, chewing up clock, finishing the game off. Devin, just your initial reaction to a game. I think Ohio State, even though maybe they didn't have to win it in terms of making the playoff, they could have went, they go 10-2 and make the playoffs, but I feel like they had to win this for that locker room.
Yeah, definitely. You go on the road, you've got a top 5 ball game. You're sitting there with one loss after Oregon, and this is the one that everyone had circled. Penn State, obviously, you saw some of the stuff in the media about being their Super Bowl. And you go on the road, you're down to your third string. Granted, he was a starter, but you're down to, in effect, your third string left tackle making his first start. You got your left guard, even though he's a center all last year, making his first start of the season at a new position. So there's all sorts of variables there that you weren't sure which way they were going to go. And you come out there and you're facing one of the best, from the sounds of things, one of the best defensive ends in the country. And he made a couple of plays, but you got to give credit there. But big picture, you go on the road, bonkers crowd. Penn State's always a tough place to play, no matter who you talk to. Biggest crowd ever. You heard him talk about on the show, on the game broadcast there. And you go in there, you run the ball. Second half, you almost could say it was old school, dominate the line of scrimmage. It was there's no getting around it. Obviously be able to nitpick after the fact, but to sit here and go, hey, you know what a bounce back game. I wouldn't be far big of a stretch to say almost a statement game, if you will, for the season so far.
Yeah, and I get super picky about the wins over the 7-5 Big Ten teams and things like that. These games, like the Penn State game or the Oregon game, if they had pulled that out, those are the games where I'm just just find a way to win. And, we can complain about the offensive line or the offensive or defensive play call. We can do all that another time. And that's one of those wins today where it's just hey, they did what they needed to do. My 3 now. Let's start with the Chip Kelly effect, though. I thought that Chip called a great game against Oregon. I thought he called a very conservative game against Nebraska, and that may have been, was that Ryan Day kind of telling him, hey, we got these O-line issues. We don't want to show Penn State too much. We've got some things kind of saving for them. Who knows? But, it's been peaks and valleys here the last couple of weeks. I thought today he schemed so many guys open for them. It wasn't even funny. I think with better execution, I thought he schemed up a 40-point game for them today. And I think they left a couple touchdowns out there. Obviously, there was a few drives they weren't able to convert field goals to touchdowns. They had to settle for field goals. But I thought Chip Kelly schemed them a 35 to 40-point game today. I thought he was scheming guys open. There's times where it's okay, Jeremiah Smith's just an alien and he makes an unbelievable play, or Emeka Ibuka just makes an unbelievable play, or Judkins, whoever. But I thought today a lot of what we saw was Chip Kelly's scheme getting guys open. The Brandon Inniss touchdown, and one example, he really made Penn State pay for choosing to play so much man, and just a lot of misdirection, just a lot of stuff thrown at him. Just your thoughts, Devin, on the game Chip called and what you saw there.
So we're going to go, and I'm going to put two talks together here real quick. You kind of go back to the Oregon game again. We keep referencing already, and it seemed like Oregon's offensive coordinator had Knowles' rules figured out and used them against them. Chip Kelly had Coach Allen's rules figured out and built his game plan around, this is how we're going to break your defense using your own rules against you. It wasn't just this in his touchdown. He also schemed him open again on very similar type concept, tight compressed formation, run a quick little crossing route. And, he's just sitting wide open on an easy pitch and catch, and he turns it upfield, makes a big play happen. Some unbalanced formations. And then you saw speed option not once, but twice, using Will Howard's threat to run. And again, there was just no one there, and a couple big, huge plays on speed option into the boundary. Again, you got 4 wide receivers to the field. How are you going to cover it up? And they had numbers to the boundary. When you run the quarterback as a quarterback run threat, like you heard Coach Meyer talk about during the week, you got to run the quarterback. Well, today they did it in spots. They used it there to seal the game. He made reference to a couple of touchdowns left on the board. We can nitpick the ball security there on the 1 yard line, but he still hit a 25-yard run on quarterback power, and for almost had a touchdown out of it. So schemed up some well-designed quarterback runs when you needed them. And 2 other things I want to touch on here. Talk about some huge guys stepping up in this game that I don't want to get lost. Was this Thurman's first catch of his career? I'm gonna need someone to go back and check that, because
I don't think so. I don't think so. Now it may have been his first of the season, I think, or he may have had one earlier in the season. But yeah, they haven't used him a lot.
Huge. I mean, Will Howard to keep the play alive, and then Thurman to go get the ball, bobbling around. I mean, just a complete, how many times you've seen that just bounce off his helmet and go to the opposition's hands, and he makes a huge play. And then, we talk about kicking field goals. 2 big field goals by Ohio State's field goal kicker. I mean, they're both 40 plus. Again, we keep comparing and contrasting the Oregon game already, but there was a lot of angry fans, if you will, talking about why didn't Day play for the field goal at the end of the Oregon game. Well, he settled for field goals here twice, and the kicker came up big in both circumstances, because those were not chip shot field goals that he made.
Yeah, that second one, not a lot of margin for error on that second one. I wasn't sure. I thought I was going to get a piece of the goalpost there for a minute and snuck it in. But those were clutch kicks. This was in a way, this was kind of as sloppy, especially that first half, as sloppy as it was, like missed opportunities and things like that. In a way, that fourth quarter was kind of like all of the bad karma, all the bad juju from like all their previous failures in the fourth quarter against, top 5 teams, missing field goals, the defense not getting off the field, the offense not, getting that 4-minute offense at the end of the game to kind of run chew the clock up, run the clock out. All these things they've been unable to do. They did them all today, despite all the missed. We can talk about the missed opportunities in the first half, but they did all the little things in the fourth quarter that they haven't done when they lost to Georgia or in the Michigan loss or in the Oregon loss. So they figured some things out today. I think this will be huge for their confidence moving forward in these types of games. Now that they know, hey, yes, we can make a clutch kick. We can get a clutch defensive stop. We can run the clock out. We can get the ball back with 5 minutes left in the game and run and impose our will on the opponent and make sure they don't get the football back. There were so many things I think they can take from this fourth quarter to the second half today that will help them from a confidence perspective. But again, I thought Chip, great job. Again, defense, key stops was my second point, my 3 and out. Don't think they forced a fourth quarter punt again, but they only had they only have one possession, I think, maybe in the fourth quarter, and they got the huge goal line stand. It's interesting how just these little things that haven't gone well for them down the stretch in other games, all of a sudden, again, you kind of create your own luck a little bit today in the fourth quarter. Great effort up front. I thought Caden McDonald was fantastic in that fourth quarter, especially on that goal line. I know the third down play completely blew it up. That's our guy. I know, Devin, you and I have been calling for more Caden McDonald. We got him today, I believe, because of injury, but hopefully that's something that they stick with, moving forward. But be honest, Devin, when Tyler Warren breaks that run down to the 3-yard line, it's 3rd and 5, you give a 33-yard run to tie it to the tight end, and you're thinking, here we go again, right? You're thinking it's going to be tied again, and the offense is going to have to come in at the end and swoop in and score at the very end of the game if they want to win. But they come out and they get the stop. Just what were your thoughts, I guess, when Warren's kind of continually going down the sidelines? Like, are you going to push him out of bounds at some point? Like the 15, the 10, the 5, like when's he going to be pushed out of bounds?
I think there's a lot to be said. One thing I'll say is I kept getting flashbacks to all these Ohio State, Penn State games from years past. Like, is this going to be the 2005 game? It starts off with the pick 6. You're going, oh no, 2005 flashbacks. And then, you see Ohio State start battling the back. You're like, okay, maybe this is going to be 2017. It's going to be back and forth all game. And then, kind of to your point, we see Warren going to run down the sideline like, okay, is this going to be 2016? That's what I kept thinking to myself as I'm watching this game unfold. I'm like, which variation of the Ohio State, Penn State story is this game going to unfold as? Because they play tight games. They always do, especially when they're at Happy Valley. So again, but I will say this from a coaching point of view perspective, if you will, get him on the ground. Get him on the ground. All hope did look lost, but your defensive guy, especially defensive back, get the guy on the ground, make him snap it again. And you saw what happens. They made Penn State have to snap it 4 more times, and they came away with nothing. So, if you want to talk about finding some positive in what otherwise was a big explosive play, hey, you know what? There wasn't much room for margin for error at that point, but you got him on the ground, and when it looked like all was lost, came up with a huge stop.
And then my third thing, and I said this, it's interesting. My 2 things in my game prediction, which I picked Ohio State to win by a field goal, were that they needed to know exactly where Tyler Warren was constantly. Their receivers could not beat Ohio State one-on-one. I was very confident in that coming in, but Tyler Warren was going to be a problem. They were able to really look. He made a couple of really nice plays, especially late in the game. But compared to what he's been doing to other teams, I thought Ohio State did a great job against Tyler Warren. And then the other thing I said, they've got to reestablish the run. They did that. So that was my third point, was reestablishing the run. Tremendous job by the offensive line today to get a push up front. About 180 yards rushing, I think was the final tally. And given the lack of possessions really for most of this game, but especially in the second half, a very strong number. Quinshon Judkins at one point was in the 6.5, 7 yards of carry range. Henderson had some very nice runs. Will Howard got involved. I guess after we saw that thud of a performance last week in the run game, again another big confidence thing right here with the run game getting reestablished with the new combination up front.
Oh, huge! I mean, again, especially all the circumstances, like you said, you're on your third left tackle, brand new starting left guard that hadn't played all year basically. So to see them to go out and reestablish the run different types of ways as well. You saw some pistol run again. I've always made the argument that Travion Henderson is a phenomenal Jim Tressel I formation tailback, and you saw it today with some of the pistol, and they're sneaking the tight end in there as a fullback, and you saw him just downhill, and how explosive he is when he sticks his foot in the ground, takes off. I know he didn't rip off a huge 60-yard. Patton and Henderson run, but some of his runs where he was getting 7, 8 were just explosive downhill runs. And again, you saw it again from Judkins, just tough, hard yards there to grind like you said, the 4-minute offense, just grind down Penn State there at the end of the ball game.
Yeah, I went back and forth on game ball. This was so tough. I'm going to get a lot of hate in the comments, I think, for my game ball, but it is what it is. I could have went Donovan Jackson. I almost went Chip Kelly. And I was like, well, they only scored 20. I don't think it was Chip's fault. I think it was execution stuff. Then it was like, okay, I could go Donovan Jackson. That was a huge kind of step up for him. He did give up a couple sacks to Abdul Carter. Carson Hinsman coming in at left guard could have easily, but I went with Caleb Downs. The things they're doing with him right now, I mean, he is doing everything for them. He was tremendous today, made so many elite open field tackles today that limited Penn State on maybe a 3 to 4 yard gain, where it's like, well, if Caleb Downs doesn't make that tackle, maybe it's a 10, 12 yard gain. Maybe it keeps a drive going. So it was really tough for me. This was one of those, like, usually there's one or two obvious picks for me today. Like, I could have went with 5 different guys, but I just think Caleb Downs has been just the absolute rock of that defense. And I just thought maybe it doesn't show up. He didn't have the flashy like pick 6 or anything like that, but I think everyone's focused on the offensive line, and rightfully so. They did a great job today, and just the new combination there. And like I said, there's some deserving guys up front there, but he just makes life easy back there. As you point out on Twitter, they have basically playing a Mike linebacker role at times. He's like the eraser back. He just erases everything.
That was the point I was just getting ready to make. Stole words right out of my mouth there. Was this day and age with safety play, defensive back to general, you typically notice them in extremes, whether it's a huge play that they create or it's a huge play that they give up. And what Caleb Downs has done at safety has done a phenomenal job of turning what I call 80-yard explosive.
Huge stops, man, right on the goal line.
We got Will Howard.
I mean, that changed the game, man. And the O-line, I mean, all the stuff they took during the week, and and all the flack that they were getting, for them to step up the way that they did, for us to run the ball and keep the ball in our hands and win the game with the ball in our hands. I mean, that's unbelievable, man. And just being able to scrape out a win like that, it's not pretty. They're a good football team. I do believe that, and they did some good things. I did some bad things. I believe if you take away the pick and the turnover in the end zone, it's probably like 28-3 going into half. It's a different game, but man, we willed ourselves to win that game. I can't give enough credit to my teammates. They bailed me out. It's just winning a game like that, man. In my home state, it's unbelievable.
Well, did you get the ball for 1 after the goal line stand? I know the mindset was, but did you guys discuss that? That's just not let them get the ball back. The fact that you stayed on the ground, how important and special was it?
That was huge. We willed ourselves to win that game. That was we put the ball on Q and Trey and the O-line's back and let them win the game for us, man. And I mean, I think we're averaging like 5 yards a carry on QB sneak right now. Like, our O-line is unbelievable. That. So, like, I mean, just, getting the ball out, being able to, the biggest thing on that drive, I think, is huge. And that we always talk about getting it out past the 5, and then, another, a couple big runs, by Q and Trey, and man, that was huge. That was huge.
Awesome. Well, you keep talking about you certainly would like to play better.
Yeah.
What was your mindset after the interception? It was so loud here. It was the biggest crowd in Beaver Stadium history. We certainly didn't want to start the game that way. What was it like for you going to the sideline? What was the conversation? What were you thinking internally?
Man, I was just like, hey, I made this a little harder than it should have been on myself and us. But the mindset can't change, man. And you got to just continue to, if you let that play affect the next play, that's when it becomes a problem, man. Because as much as I'd love to go back and change that play, and see it in its own and not throw that ball, I would. But how you respond is how you have to come back.
That's it. Okay. Will, thank you very much.
Hey, Will, just one quick. What'd you tell the team as you were coming out for one? What'd you tell them in the huddle?
Let's go win this game. We did.
That was the G version of it.
All right, folks, thanks for being here. We're going to open up over here. Austin Ward.
Ryan, I asked last week to kick it off. Was this an angry version of Ohio State?
Yeah, I think so. Especially at the end. But we're going to go back and watch this and see a lot of things and break it down and, realize that the game probably could have been a different spot. But at the end of the day, the way that, we've been talking about it is go win the game. And we had to get a stop on defense. We went all the way to the 1 yard line. We got that stop. Tyleek goes out. We got to, send, K-Mac in the game and a few other guys to get that stop. And then, we get the ball back there, with over 4 minutes to go. And was it over 4 minutes to go? Yeah. And was that what it was? Yeah. And to finish that drive the way we did, I think is just going to springboard our physicality, our toughness as we head into the back half of the season. But these guys want it. And one of the things we talked about, this week was that, in life, you're going to have these opportunities where you got to go will yourself to win, and you got to go take something. You got to go find a way to get that thing done, whether it's, for your family, in your career, or in the game of football. And our guys did that today. They did. And I'm really happy for this team. I'm happy for the seniors. And I think this is going to springboard us moving forward.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
I don't think it's overstating. He said he was at a crossroads coming into this game. How important was this win? The loss was devastating. How big is this?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, Bill, that we were at a crossroads. This was a big game for us. We didn't really want to publicly say that, but we said that behind closed doors. And it's a big game for us for a lot of reasons. And to get a top 5 win like this on a road in a tough environment, moving Donnie over to left tackle. We felt like, going into this game, it was going to be a difficult environment. We knew we had to win the rushing yards. Obviously, the turnover battle was going to be big. And then, X plays. And so we had to really focus on those things. But at the end of the day, we had to find a way to get a stop and to get that extra first down or score. And that's what it's going to come down to. And so I think this is going to build us moving forward. But for our guys to get this win is going to go a long way. And, guys came back on this team for a reason. It's to go, win the rivalry game, win the Big Ten championship, and win a national championship. And so along the way, I think there was this conversation about the expectations and all those types of things. And I said to the team, there's no great accomplishments that happen without going through adversity. It's just the truth. You don't just walk into a season and think you're going to go reach your goals. It doesn't work that way. That's just not the way life works. And so you get backed up against the wall. You got to respond, and that is life. So all of our goals are in front of us now, and we've been through a lot, and now we have to continue to build as we head into the back half of the season. But I can tell you, coming out of that locker room right there, there's a lot of guys in a room that are excited. Probably the most animated locker room I've been in a long time. And so now, what are we going to do with it moving forward? But we are going to enjoy this tonight. Coaches, players, staff, everybody involved, because this was a moment that we have to enjoy, because a lot of work that's been put in for this game.
Over to the right, Dan Hope, Lebanon Warriors.
Ryan, just this defense, to have its backs against the wall in that situation and get that goal line stand, just what kind of springboard do you think that can be for this defense the rest of the year?
Well, think about last week. We had it on the 1, and then we get the interception by Igbinosun, going in at the end of the half, and then you add this one into it. So it shows you that there's a grit, there's a toughness, there's a never give up, give me an inch, I'm going to defend it type mentality. And you got to give Jim and the entire staff credit on defense for their preparation going into this game. Penn State does an excellent job of changing formations, motionings, different looks. They got Warren back there at quarterback, and it looks like he's about in on that play, and they he's just short, and we found a way to get the stand. So but it comes down to the players. Coaches can put you in a situation, but the players got to go do it. They did it, and I'm proud of them.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Right. Obviously, it's been an interesting, I think, past 10 months for Carson. Obviously, having a job last year, losing a job this year. What you guys seeing him this week to practice, up in the position to be ready, and what you're seeing him from the development standpoint over the last
we went with experience. That was the decision we made. In this environment, we went with experience. Now, I don't know what he's going to grade out at, but you didn't notice so much. And that's a good sign for a guard when you don't notice so much. So we'll get on the film and see how he did. But I think his experience paid off, and he was a big part of this win today.
Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, you talked about an animated locker room that may be one of the most animated you've ever been when that game closed out. I know you don't like to listen to the noise, but for you personally, is there justification in terms of the way you've always talked about toughness? You talked about closing it out. Defense did it, offense did it.
Yeah, I think so.
Can you just expand on your emotions at that? Was it relief? What was it?
Yeah, there's a lot there to probably unpack that I'm not going to get into all of it. But yeah, there's a lot that goes with being the head coach at Ohio State. And you can say ignore everything that goes on, but your players read it. Your coaches read it, your staff members read it, your families read it. And, you got to stay strong in those moments. But that entire team, our families, they all believed. And so to go do that and accomplish that, what we did today in this game and a top 5 victory, it feels good right now. Now, we still got a lot of football ahead of us, but yeah, right now it feels good. And I'm proud of our team, and I'm proud of our coaching staff.
Folks, we're going to have players outside the back of our locker room here momentarily. Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Right. I don't know how much you've heard of Will, but he was pretty emotional coming off the field ending here.
Yeah.
Just what did he give you bouncing back from 2 big mistakes to seal it at the end with the slide there, which felt kind of justified after the
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think of it like that. I thought he was just going to continue to run. But what he gives us is a toughness at quarterback, and having him as a weapon running the ball. I mean, you saw the run that he had when the ball squirted out. I mean, that was a really executed play, really well executed play. Travion had an unbelievable block on that play. So it was gut wrenching because it was so well executed. Guys were getting after people and finishing everybody to the ground, and the ball squirts out on the 1-yard line. And it's literally like taking a shot right to the stomach. But there's nothing you can do. You got to regroup and keep playing. And that's a sign of somebody who is resilient, who's been through it before, and he willed it to happen. He did, and he had a look in his eye all week that he was not going to lose this game. Whether it was because it was a top 5 team or it was from the state of Pennsylvania and a place that he grew up wanting to be a Nittany Lion. I think all that probably played into it. He just refused to lose, and that mentality, helped us win today.
It's going to be a final question for Coach Tim May, Letterman Row.
Yeah, Ryan, you've been in a game with so many key, crazy, game-turning plays. I mean, the ball, like you said, coming off Will Howard's knee there, and goes out of bounds, touchback. But David Sigmanosin gets a holding call or pass interference call. This play
Gets a pick.
one of the most crazy interceptions you ever seen. Just put that in your perspective.
So I went last night at the hotel. I went back through and I picked out probably 50 plays from the game 2 years ago here. If you remember that first half, that was almost as crazy. And I said to the guys at halftime, I don't know what's going to happen, but there's going to be a score. And it's probably going to be around 14-10, 17-14. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And it was like, you get to halftime and you're like, whoa. It was the same way, if you remember, 2 years ago. And then even in the second half, there was craziness. And then JT got a bunch of turnovers and the game flipped real quick. So we were sort of prepared for a crazy game that way. It just happens here against Penn State. And we're going to go back and look at ways that we felt like maybe we could have won by multiple scores and all that. But ultimately, you got to go win the game in the fourth quarter, regardless of the score. So that was another one of those crazy games.
Coach, thank you very much.
All right, guys.
All right, that was Ryan Day. Let's go to James Franklin.
But then Sunday night, we got to flush it and move on to Washington. We can't allow one loss to turn into two. The reality of college football is everything is still ahead of us, and we got to do a great job of making the corrections, eliminating the things that were unforced errors that happened today, and then we got to find a way to get a win next week at home, and everything is still in front of us.
Neil and then Andrew.
James, can you address some of the pre-snap, post-snap penalties, and particularly the one that gave them the first down on their second touchdown drive? What did you see there? Yeah, jumping off sides and an obvious third down. Things. So happened last week, happened again this week. That's on me. We have to be a disciplined football team. We were not disciplined at times today.
Andrew?
Coach, you saw fans throwing things in the field, being very frustrated. What's your message to them about today's game?
I understand their frustration. The guys in the locker room are just as frustrated, if not more, but college football has changed. And we have an opportunity moving forward to right some wrongs from today. And that's what we're going to focus on. I get it. We get an unbelievable crowd here. We get unbelievable support. You don't do that without passion. And there's great things that come from that, and there's hard things that come from that. That's part of the job. That's part of the job, and I own it all. I own it all.
Tyler and then Adam.
James, you mentioned last week that Bo Pabula out there can open things up for the running backs today. Katron and Nick seem to have trouble finding that daylight today. Bo had one carry for no yards. Hindsight being what it is, do you think maybe there was an opportunity to get Bo more involved to find that jolt?
Well, I think the plan was to get Bo more involved based on how practice had gone this week with Drew, but we didn't have a whole lot of success when he was in there. So I think that probably played a part of it. When we didn't have a whole lot of success when he was in there, we got away from it.
Where are you? Adam and then Mason.
James, you can't control the outside, but as far as yourself and evaluating yourself in these big game performances, how do you do that? What significance do you put on a game like today?
Yeah, again, there's nobody that's looking in the mirror harder than I am. I will say this, and I've said it before, 99% of the programs across college football would die to do what we've been able to do in our time here, and that's all of us. But I also understand when you're at a place like Penn State, there's really, really high expectations. When you're at a place like Ohio State, there's really, really high expectations. I get it. I totally get it. So we've looked at all these things really hard. We'll continue to look at these things really hard. There's a lot of things that I had planned on saying when I came in here today, but they are not appropriate to say right now. So I'll hold them till another time.
Mason, then Joe.
Hey, Coach O'Leary. Without Drew Carter's play today, obviously 2 sacks, but also, like you said, the outside play. What was that kind of watching him, knowing that he could also do great things, but also kind of hurt you in some ways with penalties and other poor plays?
Well, right now, in this setting, I'm going to focus on the positive things he does, and he's an impactful player. We'll make the corrections, in the locker room, and we'll make the corrections in the meeting room, but he's a big-time player. He makes big-time plays consistently. There's things that we got to get cleaned up with all of them, Abdul included.
Last question to Joe.
James, the sequence at the end over here on the side. Sure. At the end of the first half, getting up the first and goal in the field, and then that playing the corner ended up being the interception. What went into that play, and what did you see from that play?
What did I see on the play that they overturned to an interception?
Yes.
Drew made a nice throw. We had a chance to come down with the ball. They called it as an incomplete at first. Then they reviewed it, called it as an INT. The guys that are watching it on TV got a better idea of how that whole thing played out. There was a ton of 50-50 calls in this game that you could call in either direction. There's a ton of them in this game. The fumble on the sideline in the near arm that goes out at the 2-yard line, obviously, and is called a touchdown. There's a ton of calls, 50-50 calls that could go either way. And in that type of game, they're critical. They're critical. Besides that, I don't have a whole lot more for you. But, obviously, turning the ball over in
All right. We are giving up on some of the audio there. With Franklin. Sorry about that. That's a Penn State thing, so we're not really in control of that audio. Devin, go ahead and finish your point. We were talking about Caleb Downs before Will Howard came up, and just wanted to how important he's been to this defense, the different things he does, kind of how he kind of is the eraser kind of on the back end of the defense to prevent big plays and just kind of clean everything up. And just your thoughts on what Downs has meant to the defense, just his performance today, and what you've seen out of Caleb.
Well, you said it exactly right. I mean, he's a phenomenal, like I said, a guy that turns explosive plays into, short gains. He puts guys on the ground at 4 or 5 yards on plays where if he doesn't, it could potentially be going, who knows what type of explosive type play. And he does that on a nearly regular basis. I mean, it's 3 or 4 times last week against Nebraska where it's one man to beat for the Nebraska ball carrier, and it's Downs, and Downs puts him on the ground. We saw him today quite literally. I mean, they made a point to highlight it and replay it during the broadcast where he makes a shoestring tackle somehow, where he grabs the guy's foot and makes a tackle that way. I mean, he just does, again, you don't see necessarily the huge hits like we saw 20 years ago from, say, like a Mike Doss or, he hasn't really had that big game-breaking interception, pick six type play. But what he does do is he covers this guy really well, so he's not getting thrown at in the first place. And the way Coach Knowles is moving him around now, we saw it again today. We saw it last week, where when they're in the 3 safety package. They'll bring in basically a Tampa 2-4-3 look and move Caleb Downs to basically like a middle linebacker, and he reads it as well as any linebacker, and he's inside out to the football, untouched, putting guys on the ground. Just an incredible addition to the defense. And again, he may not necessarily show up in these huge, top 10 plays of the week type plays, but the plays he does make a huge impact on the overall performance of the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, I mean, just the way he fills and run support, the way he, they call it running the alleys when you kind of come down and those bubble screens or these perimeter runs, perimeter throw game, the way he comes down and fills and is able to make these just tackles at 120% speed. Unbelievable. It's just, it's a special gift.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And again, it's the unsung plays that you don't realize how impactful they are until it's almost over with, that he makes every single week. I'll go back to another safety years ago. Jordan Fuller was like that in 2019 as well. He kind of got overshadowed a lot by the guys he was playing with, the Chase Youngs and Akutas, and everyone that was a part of that defense. But he was another safety that was similar to that, in that, just when you think a play is going to break and something's going to go bad wrong for the Ohio State defense, you have a safety like a Fuller and like Caleb Downs now that puts a guy on the ground. And like we saw today, make them snap it again. You never know what's going to happen. And that's what you're getting week in and week out at this point from Caleb Downs. And that just goes out saying, like I mentioned, the Tampa 2 and all the way they move him around, bring him on pressure, rotate him down in coverage, all the different ways Jim Knowles is really starting to dial up and utilize his unique skill set for the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, we didn't get the post games weren't super long today. We didn't get 15, 20 minutes of Ryan Day or anything like that. But the one thing I thought was interesting is he kind of reiterated what we said earlier about just finishing the game. It just feels like there's been so many excuses about, well, if this thing wouldn't have happened, the Marvin Harrison targeting and the penalty or the fumble or, just things that happened in the first half, things that happened with 10, 15 minutes to go in the game or 20 minutes to go in the game where the game is tied or within a possession. And it's like, just, look, yes, those things happened and they were unlucky and they were unfortunate, but you've got this tie game or this 1-score game going into the fourth quarter. Just, hey, that's what's happened. Now go finish the game. And they finally were able to do that today. And I just think that's going to make a big difference moving forward. I just think we're past like, oh, what if this hadn't happened or what? Just, okay, yes, those things happened. You still have every opportunity to go out in the fourth quarter, get a key stop, get a key drive, do something, make a play, and win the game. And they were able to do that today. They say they're cliches because they're true, but it really is that. I think we heard Howard say it in his post-game comments. It really is that next play mentality of, yeah, I want it back, but there's nothing I can do about it at this point. And that's really what separates, you get in down to it. That's really what separates a lot of, great teams from good teams or good teams from great teams, is that ability to go, okay, that was not good, but it's gone. Let's give everything we got on this play and make some good things happen for us. And I think this was the first game we really saw Ohio State take that leap as a team to that, down 10-0, worst possible start than that they could have imagined. And they went right down the field and scored like it was, not trying to, just discredit Penn State defense, but they just drove it right down the field and, down 10-0, made it 10-7, and just like that. So again, a lot of credit for the mentality and taking that step forward that we saw today from the Ohio State football team. Yeah, there may be one that comes up down the stretch here, maybe in the playoffs, maybe in a Big Ten championship type scenario. But in terms of just big drives, what an unbelievable response that was after the pick six. That could have gone sideways on them so fast. Like, you have just committed an unforced error, put yourself down 10 points on the road against an undefeated top 5 team. You've stirred the crowd into a frenzy at this point. this could have really went sideways. They may not have a bigger drive than that all season. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they'll be fortunate enough to have a situation where they've got to put a drive together in January or something. But that's one of the biggest response drives that I've seen an Ohio State team have in a really long time.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Again, as hostile a crowd as they'll face the rest of the season. Obviously going back them in Oregon, two of the toughest stadiums to play in. And again, 10-0, pick six, all the momentum's going against you, and just to work your way down the field and put a touchdown on the board. Got to give a lot of credit. Again, you could have said, could have tucked tail and said, we're down to our third left tackle, left side of the line. This is it, boys. And again, they bounced back, and you got to give a lot of credit to that mentality, that Will Howard was talking about in the post game of next play. Just keep playing. Don't worry about the last play. You just got to keep playing and win the next play.
Let's get back to the offensive line, because there was a time, maybe the second week of August, where I really thought Carson Hinsman was going to be the team's starting right guard. Now he missed some time in camp. He had like an illness. He missed. And so at that point, I think he just kind of got pushed out of the mix by some of the other candidates there, and has essentially been working as the backup center ever since. But I think we saw today why I might have thought that in August about him starting at right guard. I thought he was very, very good. I thought, and yes, he's been playing center, but here's kind of a fun fact. And they didn't really do a great job of this on the broadcast. I'm not going to be too critical of those guys. They have a tough job, but Carson Hinsman was a guard his entire high school career. He had never snapped a football in a live game setting until they were Army Bowl or All-American Bowl, and now it's the Navy Bowl. But he was at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. They had a bunch of issues up front. They needed a center, so he's like, "Well, I'll try." That was the first time he ever snapped a football. So like a week before he got to Ohio State was the first time he ever snapped a football. So he is a guard by trade. And so to see him just sort of, and not only a guard, he was a guard in like a triple option, like old school, like wishbone type, and so he is used to hat on hat. Let's move some people. And so I thought that was really impressive for him today to kind of jump in at left guard, kind of go back to what some of the basics maybe he worked on in high school. And since he's been at Ohio State, he's been a center. So, but that was a tremendous performance, I thought, from Hinsman. And, obviously they've got to figure this out the rest of the season. I think this is probably the combination they're going to roll with the rest of the way. But we'll see what happens when Zen Mahalski comes back. But I guess that's my question to you. Would you just keep it this way at this point? I mean, that's kind of where I'm leaning, but you may feel differently.
I think it's at this point, it's kind of ride the hot hand. And I think, coming out the way this game unfolded, the way they ran the ball, I think big picture, the way they really protected Will Howard. I know, there was a couple sacks, in the game, but it didn't seem as if, knee-jerk reaction, more, caveat here. It didn't seem like Will Howard was facing a lot of constant pressure all game long from the Penn State defensive line. So I think it's one of those things where you just ride the hot hand as long as you can, and whatever that combination is. And it looks like today, he ran the ball 200 yards and a couple passing touchdowns, and probably threw for 200. I haven't seen the stats yet for passing yards, but I'm sure they threw for 200 something. So around 40 yards total offense. I think you just ride the hot hand at this point.
Yeah, and one thing they mentioned on the broadcast, Donovan Jackson never played tackle in his life. Well, that's not true. He was a high school tackle. But so like many, and Hinsman's kind of the exception. He's not really the rule. Most of these guys play left or right tackle in high school, because in high school you're generally just putting your best offensive lineman at left or right tackle. So a lot of these guys do. So Donovan Jackson had played tackle in high school, but that's not anywhere close to what he was doing today. Obviously, going against Abdul Carter and against a Penn State defense on the road and everything else, but. It was encouraging. You would have to think he only gets better with more reps, practicing there, going live in these next few games before they get to Indiana later in the month. So yeah, I'm with you. I expected them to be better today, obviously, than last week. It was hard. I think it was hard last week to get much worse, to be quite honest with you. So I expected things to look a little better this week, but I think this came together very quickly. I think some surprise at how quickly they were able to kind of piece this together and go out there and put forth a great effort is I think it's okay to be a little bit surprised by that. So, what do you take away from this as far as moving forward? This is kind of the easier part of their conference schedule coming up. You've got the two big ones at the end. You've got Indiana. Obviously you have Michigan at the end of the season. They're going to go on a stretch here of what's Northwestern and Purdue or their next two, in whatever order. What can you take from this? Are there some things you think they figured out today that you want to kind of see moving forward? Because I hated the Nebraska approach where it just felt like they were keeping things close to the vest for Penn State. Like, I'd like to see them just sort of like, let's keep rolling this stuff out there and let's not worry about putting certain things on tape, So what do you think they can kind of take from this last game here and move forward with?
I think, I'm going to go coach speak here for a minute. If you really are a good team and you're playing a team you're supposed to beat, you go out there and demonstrate that you're that much more of a superior team. And you don't allow a team that shouldn't hang around. Obviously you go out there and establish that you're the better team early, and you just, beat them the rest of the game. Quite simply put, it doesn't take, you don't have to go back too far to, 2022 when they're in a dogfight. I know the weather was all crazy and all that, but 2022 was a one-score game at Northwestern, if I recall correctly. And it took C.J. Stroud running the ball to win the game. And the ultimate irony there, you don't have to look too far back even to find a Purdue game coming out of nowhere. Purdue bit Coach Urban Meyer, and Purdue at one point, once or twice bit Coach Jim Tressel. So you can't, it's Big Ten football. Crazy things have happened to Ohio State when they're, playing teams they're supposed to beat. So if you're really a team that wants to talk about winning championships, then when you're playing a team that you're supposed to go out there and beat by whatever the spread's going to be, you go beat them by that, whatever that spread's supposed to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in the business of holding anything back at this point. I think you just put it all out there, because eventually, if this season goes in the direction you want it to go, you're going to have some time in December to,
put in new wrinkles, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. So I would avoid Nebraska-itis at all at all costs here down the stretch. But again, I just think, just not to repeat myself, I just think the things they have constantly not been able to do in the late stages of big games over the past 3 or 4 years on both sides of the ball, they were able to do today. And again, I have to think that you finally break through. I have to think it's going to pay dividends down the road. As far as the defensive line today, some missed opportunities in terms of sacks. Aller got away a few times, but it felt to me, again, Devin, you're a defensive guy. They really seem to control the line of scrimmage. I felt there were not a lot of chunk plays at all in the running game. I thought we talked about Ohio State, or we talked about Will Howard not facing consistent pressure, getting sacked a couple times, but not really not like every time he dropped back, he was under pressure. It felt a little different, especially in the second half. It felt like Ohio State kind of turned things like maybe mid-second quarter. And it started to feel like Drew Aller was constantly getting moved off his spot. I guess, why do you think this has been such an inconsistent thing for them? Because they put in performances like this, and you're like, well, why can't that be replicated more often, every week, or at least more consistently? And did you see that the way I did? And what did you see out of the D-line today? How do they replicate this moving forward?
Well, I think, I'm gonna say this. It seemed like, don't know the official, how many play chart yet, but it seemed like they were rotating a lot more frequent, early and often. So I think number one, you probably had guys felt better as the game went on. He mentioned the second half performance of the defensive line. They probably felt fresher in the second half. They hadn't played. I think I saw one of the Ohio State defensive linemen last week played 65 plays or something like that. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but you cut that in half, throughout the first half. All of a sudden, fourth quarter, you're feeling fresh when you're on play 30 instead of on play 55. So as a result, or an impact of that, you're just fresher. Your legs are fresher and you're still explosive like you were in the first quarter. So it may not necessarily been even a play call. It's just your starting 5-star end has fresh legs with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and has explosive get off. I think another thing you saw to talk about coaching impact, you saw Knowles mix up his pressures more. I think one of the big sacks, if I recall correctly, was a zone blitz, a 5-man pressure, dropped defensive end out to the boundary, brought one of the linebackers on a delayed blitz that just opened wide open. So as a result, they didn't really have to overwhelm them with a 6-man, bring everybody pressure, but because the way the pressure was designed, it hit for a big play for the Ohio State defense. I think another thing was, again, and he followed that right up with a max coverage. So again, it was a pressure from, talk about coverage and rush working together. It was almost a coverage sack. Defensive ends were able to hit home because everyone was all covered up and the quarterback was trying to work through his progression and ran out of time.
Yeah, great all-around effort. Our Buckeye Weekly guys will be with you here in a minute. They're getting set up. Final thought on just the final fourth quarter, breaking the ice, the big drive, Will Howard's legs. How do you manage that moving forward? Because everyone's going to be, just run Will Howard. Urban, of course, is run Will Howard 15, 20 times a game. Well, okay, fine, but A, what if he gets hurt? And B, getting into 15 car crashes every Saturday does take its toll on your ability to throw. So how do they manage that, I guess, moving? Because that was a big part of the fourth quarter. He picked up some key first downs with his legs there. How do you manage Will Howard moving forward?
Well, I think you can't completely abandon him. He's there when you need him. That is all right. When all else fails, we've still got the quarterback run game, on the play chart we can flip to and use it when we need it. I think that's probably the best way to manage them going forward at this point. You can't necessarily play scared and completely abandon your offense and run nothing but the full house T formation. Okay, that would be an interesting thought to see, but you don't want to go complete install on the full house T formation and where it's just handed off all game long. You still want to run your offense. You still want to get better at your offense. And again, like I was just talking about, you can't have a game plan of we're not going to, play not to lose. You still got to play to win, still keep getting better. But again, you can design it so that, here you're not relying on your quarterback to be the primary ball carrier all game long. You talk about RPOs and go down that conversation of, handoff or throw. Again, you're still getting that read element, matching numbers, but you're not relying on the quarterback just straight pulling ball and taking off running 15 times a game.
Are we ready over at the Buckeye Weekly headquarters? It looks like we are. Getting close. Okay.
I'm good. Whenever.
Okay. We're going to have them here in a minute from the world's largest erector set at Beaver Stadium. Okay. Tony, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Well, for a game where the final score was, I think, 4 points off of my score prediction, I picked Ohio State to win 20-17. That was so unlike what the game I was expecting. I thought, well, they'll get to 20-17 and they'll do it in this way. And Nope, not even close.
No, not even close. And this was a game that Will Howard gave and took. Could have been 14 points difference of the 20-13. Throws the pick six, fumbles at the 2-yard line. I'm getting a nice, not an echo, but it feels like we are amplified by that microphone right there. Anyway,
Why don't you put it on the floor?
20-13 for the Buckeyes over Penn State. I did not get to hear any of what Ryan Day had to say because I couldn't hear anything that Ryan Day had to say. And yeah, no, I think it was just the crazy echo. But he went on, and it looked like obviously this meant a lot to him. And
Did he have anything to say to Lou Holtz?
no, not that I'm aware of, but this one, he looked a much lighter person after this one.
Well, I was in the photo workroom with a bunch of Penn State people, and there was a lot of James Franklin has to go kind of grumbling. And it's amazing how one game goes from, Ryan Day can win the big one. If this was a big one, there will be people for whom, I have a feeling that the Venn diagram of Ryan Day can't win the big one people, and this was secretly not actually a big one, is going to be basically one circle because there is no learning allowed. But this was a game that meant a lot because you win this one and it's close. So now Penn State's not going to drop to 17 or something. They'll drop to 6. And they don't have a ton of real tough games on the schedule, so they probably will finish in the 4-5 kind of range, 11-1. Ohio State now continues to control its own destiny for the Big Ten championship game. They control their own destiny for a top 2 seed, and they've almost certainly punched their ticket for the college football playoff at this point. I mean, it would probably take a loss to Indiana and a lopsided loss in if they get a Big Ten championship game, a lopsided loss there. Or I don't think there's a lot of scenarios where you go on the road, you beat Penn State, and you don't, and you go 11-1, 10-2, where you get left out.
Yeah. No, I think the most impressive thing of this game is that they got the ball back with 5-something, and just from where they got it at the 1 or the 2, and just said, we're just going to keep it. Because at that point, the message on the sideline is we don't have to give this ball back. We don't. It doesn't have to be put in the hands of the defense. This is where you leave no doubt. And the offensive line with Donovan Jackson at left tackle, Carson Hinsman at left guard, that final play, I believe a couple of those plays were behind those guys on the left side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they went behind them and trusted them, and they made some plays. Donovan Jackson gave up 2 sacks to Abdul Carter. I don't care about that.
Well, Tony, if you're in an obvious passing situation and you have a guy who hasn't played tackle and you have one of the best pass rushers in the country lined up across from him, do you think that might be a good time to put a tight end on that side of the formation? I mean, I'm not the world's greatest football mind, but that's certainly what I would think about doing in that kind of circumstance, because that feels like a pretty obvious issue. Whatever, anytime that happened, and I know at least once that happened where there was no tight end help, and it might have been both of them. Those are not on Donovan Jackson. Period. Full story. 0% on Donovan Jackson.
Yeah, no, and Abdul Carter is a very quick and explosive pass rusher. So, the offense as a whole, being able to run the ball like that, Ryan Day would talking about these 3 things: running the ball, explosives, turnovers. You win those are the 3 battles. They lose the turnover battle 2-1, but they definitely won the rushing battle. The explosive battle is the one we said that if Ohio State wins this one, they can make up for the others. 13-6 in terms of explosive plays for Ohio State's offense compared to Penn State's.
Yeah.
They had 8 explosive rushing plays, which is 10 yards or more.
Yeah.
Penn State had 6 total. And they were able to close it out. And so this was good to see Quinshon Judkins get off the schneid, get back running. He finished with 95 yards.
Is that more than 50?
It is, but everybody knew that was going to happen. Trevion Henderson, 54 yards rushing. Will Howard, 12 for 24. Not a good average, but he was effective in what he did. When he held on to the ball, he was effective. Really, really good to see. I think you leave this game kind of the opposite feeling of the Nebraska game, where you won that, but you don't feel good about it. You win this, you're able to run for 176 yards, and you close it out the way they did. You have to leave this one feeling very good about things, especially, even with the defense giving up 270 yards, and we'll talk about the defense, but all of that, it's still only a 7-point game, and maybe closer than it should have been, but it never got to them, and they never felt like they were in danger.
It never felt like they were in danger of losing the game. It felt there were points during the game where Penn State had the ball, and it was kind of like, Penn State got the ball down to what?
There was a danger of being tied.
There was a danger of being tied. Yes, Penn State got the ball down to the 1-yard line. So that's about as close as you can come to having the game be tied without having the game be tied. But I think what Ohio State fans have to be excited about right now is not just you won the game. Someone was going to win this game. Number 3 versus number 4. Someone was going to get a good win in this game, and Ohio State got the good win. Great, fantastic. Set that aside for a moment. The how. I think the how is what Ohio State fans should be really excited about, because what were Ohio State fans worried about? Rightly so, worried about coming into this game. Offensive line. Run game had been MIA for a couple weeks. The defense had gotten gashed for big plays. Defense had struggled to get off the field in some of these talent-equated games in the second half and throughout the game. All of those things got resolved to a certain degree. Like they gave up. I'm sure there are going to be people who are going to tell me that, actually, Tom, if you look at the second half,
can I tell you that Ohio State's defense did not force the punt in the fourth quarter?
They didn't. That's because they had one drive. They had 3 drives against them in the second half.
Get better.
Okay. Ohio State's defense, Tony. How many touchdowns did Ohio State's defense give up?
They gave up 0 touchdowns.
Okay, so if you give up 0 touchdowns in the history of Ohio State football, outside of the Snow Bowl, how many times do you think Ohio State's defense has yielded 0 touchdowns and they have not won the game? I feel like the answer is probably, back when people were writing penny farthings to the game, there were probably some, but probably not for a while.
Yeah,
and it was not just, hey, they got off the field. Hey, they got important stops. Hey, they had an interception. They forced a turnover. Now, they forced a turnover by the skin of their teeth, but Penn State forced a turnover by the skin of their teeth. Those 2 plays kind of canceled each other's out in a way. And you could, if this is 27-20 instead, sure, okay. But the first half, they had the opening drive. They went 14 plays, 61 yards. And that was the first great James Franklining of the day, where you're going right down the field with Drew Aller, who's been super effective, and you go right down the field, and then you get to like the 13-yard line, and you're like, you know what this calls for?
He couldn't help himself.
A different quarterback. My brother in Christ, what are you doing? Ohio State has not come up with an answer for Drew Aller yet. Why don't you let them answer that question before you ask a different one?
Yeah, he turned a 7-point drive into a 3-point drive.
Yeah,
and that's one that they certainly missed. Obviously the right call is to go for it there on the 4th down, and they got stopped. That felt like that was coming. Like Ohio State's defense had bowed up there. Penn State had not really been able to run the ball well, short yardage. Now, Tyler Warren, sure, you want to run him 30 yards around left end. That's great. But when they got down there, Ohio State twice held them, goal line stands essentially. And, that's one of where Penn State fans have to be completely frustrated. I walked to the post-game room here with a Penn State fan. And I was like, so what'd you think?
And did he punch you in the nose?
Well,
because let me just say, you had it coming.
He was actually, he was very nice. He was directing me to the post-game room. And I'm like, so what'd you think? And he's like, well, it's just another Ohio State game. And I'm like, we're still going to go to the playoffs. It's like, yeah.
Well, this is a fan base that shows up. It was a record crowd, 111,000 people. They showed up, and then did Lucy hold the football for them? No. Lucy went empty set on 4th and 1 from the 1-yard line for some reason. Lucy could not see the clock from Lucy's sideline before halftime, and managed to waste 2 minutes and multiple timeouts. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I was surprised at the timeout usage, but the decision making down there, and that's for all of the talk of Andy Kotelnicki, he's calling those plays. And
yeah, but you got, I mean, okay, but that to me is coming from the head coach. Like, what's your approach?
Right.
There?
What are we doing when we get down
like their
there?
approach was, well, whatever you do, don't let Ohio State get the ball back. And that's a moment where it's 14-10. You certainly need to be getting 3 points out of that. You should be trying to take the lead. It was the first half that Ohio State controlled for long stretches, and Penn State could have gone into the halftime with a lead, and instead they go into halftime and, well, they almost got a touchdown, which is good. They almost got away with it, but then they didn't. And but you're in a situation where you can hustle your butt down the field. Ohio State's probably not going to be playing super hyper press man. Like, get yourself a first down, get the ball into field goal range, and then have time to be able to run or pass. Manage your timeouts. No. Respectfully decline. Let's do the James Franklin.
Yeah, the Penn State offense reverted back to what it was before Drew Aller got hurt, which was Bo Perbula comes in and he's just a runner. He threw one pass, 4 yards, short little thing. Drew Aller had second week in a row, Ohio State's given up like 40-some yards rushing to the quarterback in the first half.
Yeah.
So he had like 42 at the half. Aller finishes with 31, which is pretty much the same thing that happened with Raiola last week, where they start to get after him. They get to him.
Yeah.
They were getting after him throughout the game. They got to him there in the second half.
Yeah.
So overall, like there was really nothing that Penn State's offense could do. Nick Singleton, the running back, had 5. He was the only guy that had a reception in the first half for Penn State. Then they finally start to spread it around a little bit.
Yeah.
But the lack of explosives came back to hurt them. So overall, this was one where Ohio State very well could have lost it, but also kind of like the Oregon thing. Yep. There's 14-point swings for both teams.
Oh, yeah.
And so that kind of evens out. You walk out with a 7-point win. I'm interested to hear how are Ohio State fans upset at how this was not an emphatic win?
If you are upset about this game, go find some other way to spend your fall Saturdays. Like, if this doesn't make you happy, coming in with an offensive line that's a question mark, a running game that's a question mark, a defense that's a question mark, you go on the road, you're playing the number 3 team in the country, you're playing in a very hostile and loud environment, and the team wins by hitting a couple big plays, but by running the ball in a game that neither you nor I thought they were going to be able to run the ball very much. They not only outrushed Penn State on a yards per play basis, they outrushed Penn State on a total yardage basis. The defense bowed up and had huge plays. The defense had a big stop in the second half, which people have been annoyed about, because the pass rush got home on back-to-back plays, which people have been annoyed about. And then they sealed the game behind an offensive line, which people have been annoyed about, by running the ball, which people have been annoyed about. If you're not happy right now, like, go take up macrame. College football may not be for you.
Yeah, they checked a lot of boxes. Previous two games against Penn State, they rushed for 177 yards total, 176 in this one. Do we want to do some super chats?
Okay, let's hit some super chats real quick. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. Erwin Lichtenberg says Donovan Jackson for president. I think the Jackson Hinsman ticket, if they were both 35 years old and eligible to run,
Donovan Jackson is 35.
He might be. I think that would poll pretty well in the great city. See, this is why you don't vote early, because you never know what's going to happen right before the election. So you got to wait.
November surprise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, Donovan Jackson played really well. Carson Hinsman played really well, and I'm interested to go rewatch the game, but it wasn't a disaster. There was a real wide band of possible outcomes in this game, and this was a very, very far right tail outcome for them. It wasn't perfect, but man, they ran the ball. The pass pro was pretty good all day. Will Howard helped out a little bit. Will Howard had statistically was not an amazing day, but had some real just sort of low key plays where just like give you let you slide by me there. Real Midwestern game from him, but he had he helped himself a little bit, but man, that was a really, really good game for the offensive line.
Yeah, it was. I think we got to talk to Carson Hinsman after the game, and obviously he's very thrilled and didn't want to get into too much about all of this, what this all meant to him and all of his feelings, but very happy for the offensive line as a whole. Credit to everybody else. And this was something that they talked about earlier this week about doing that. Yeah.
Odysseus, no. Bad, no. Great.
I've seen it. Yeah. Props to Donovan Jackson. As Carson Hinsman was asked about Donnie, and he's like, if I could be anybody else in the world, I'd be Donovan Jackson. And somebody else asking, like, so what'd you think of him? He's like, he can do anything. Like, there's no concerns. We probably don't even need to get into like what took him so long,
Well, I think they were hoping. I don't think that last week was, we think this is the best. I think last week was, we hope this is the best option. We hope that this will work, because then you don't have to shuffle. And it worked out. It worked out fine. Boy, is Carson Hinsman's season looking a little different than it was
for sure
5 days ago.
Yeah, he played well.
Mike Farino says, slide to end the game versus number 3 Oregon, slide to seal the win versus number 3 Penn State. Very poetic.
All he does is slide.
And yeah, but I mean, today that was a smart play. You stay down in bounds, keep the clock moving, don't give anyone a chance to knock the ball out.
I'm going to pretend that I didn't read this. That way I can write about it as if it's my own idea, because nobody else will have thought of this.
Thought of what?
Exactly. Just wait. I'll tell you later.
Erwin Lichtenberg says Donovan Jackson's a hell of a teammate, great player, and a Buckeye legend. That's not the easiest thing, to be willing to go out there and kick yourself out to another position. Being a guard, being a tackle, those are two different body types.
Yeah.
Those are two different skill sets. This is a contract year for Donovan Jackson. And he had a chance to look real bad because he was facing some real good pass rushers. And that's a move that I think that probably helps you a little bit with the NFL being able to say, look, hey, I'm willing to help you out. They're always looking for flexibility with linemen, because they only travel 8, 9 offensive linemen for a game. So you if you can fill in multiple spots, at least be solid there, confident there. That's only going to help you.
Well, and Carson Hinsman credited Donovan Jackson because he's like, it's going from a phone booth to an island, two very different things. Yeah. And of course, you're going to face some difficulties against Abdul Carter, but he got him twice, but that was it over the course of 20 dropbacks or whatever.
Okay, I think we're caught up on super chats now. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll stack up questions, but can we talk a little bit about the defense? Because Jim Knowles has gotten a lot of grief, and there's been a lot of sort of selective statistical picking, and that was a game where Penn State is not the most dynamic offense in the world. But Ohio State made them look for long stretches of the game like this was their first time playing football. They had that opening drive, which so often you see that. The opening drive, you're right down the field, bang, bang, boom.
Holding them to a field goal was a win, in my opinion.
Oh, hugely win. And it was like, oh, well, now they have a chance to really seize control. Oh, hey, he's running the run. That's not, and we got to talk about that play call too. That was, oh boy. But then, you're down 10-0. Offense comes back, 7 plays, 74 yards, boom, touchdown to Emeka Buckets, 10-7 game. Defense comes out, 3 plays, 8-yard punt. Huge drive there. Offense comes back down, 10 plays, 81 yards, touchdown. That was the Brandon Innes touchdown. All of a sudden you're up 14-10, 3 plays, 0-yard punt. And then Ohio State goes down, 8 plays, 58 yards. That was the Will Howard fumble, where they could have gone up 21-10 and really kind of stretched it out and put Penn State in a real bad spot. But then they answer, and what happens? 6 plays, 30 yards, you punt. I mean, and then they get the interception before halftime. The defense really, that was an impressive game for them.
Yeah, and they held Penn State's 4 longest drives turned into 6 points. And that kind of that happens when you have 2 goal line
all
stays.
Of Penn State's drives turned into 6 points.
But you look at they were stopping the run. Penn State did a bunch of their trick stuff on that first drive just to show a bunch of stuff. There was not a double pass, but the sweep to Aller that we had talked about. Like, they're going to throw from this, and there were 2 receivers, and both of them were covered. Very disciplined from Ohio State in that they got out leveraged a couple times, like the Tyler Warren run for 30 yards or whatever. That was blocked well, but overall, I don't know how you could be Penn State. They gave up some yards, but they stood tall at the goal line with the backs, literally against the goal line in the end zone. And you want to see them do that again. Like you've seen it, so now you know that they can do it again. And there's going to be a time where they're forced to do this. And they did it twice in a hostile environment against a good team that is powerful, but they weren't in this one on the line of scrimmage at the goal line.
Well, and I think this is also a game where it's very easy to look at this and say, well, yes, but if they had not gotten the interception right before halftime, and oh boy, if they hadn't gotten the stop on, they stopped them by 1 yard on that last drive, and if they hadn't gotten, it's very easy to what about and what if. You can just as easily what if they, the offense had scored a couple more touchdowns. Well, Ohio State was also 1 yard, maybe less from scoring an extra touchdown, and also had a fumble that got overturned. And there were a lot of 50-50 calls. It felt like that might be a NCAA record for replays in a game. It was just constant, and it was I think the Penn State scoreboard camera, the camera platform is on Mars because it is. They'd show this replay and they'd click it back and forth, and it was like I think they're playing football up there. I can't really tell, but there were a lot of very, very close plays. This is one where the strip, fumble, touchdown, whatever, interception thing that was a real bang bang thing right at the sideline, right at the goal line. Last year that went against them in the Michigan game. Today it went for them against Penn State. If you reverse those, well, they win the Michigan game last year and then they potentially lose the Penn State game. But these are the kind of fine margin things that sometimes it does come down to a play here or there, which is why it really, I'm going to say exactly the same thing I said after they lost to Oregon and everyone wanted to ride Ryan Day out of town on a rail. These are really fine margin things. Sometimes they're going to go for you. Sometimes they're going to go against you. The margin is like that. And so you can't just, 17 things are not going to go against you in a row. There are plenty of games that Ohio State has lost that have been very close games that have come down to those things. There are also games like this where a lot of the things come down in a win like that. Like you're going to win some, you are going to lose some. Tony, that's life.
That's football. I don't know if Ryan Day was asked about Tyleik Williams and his injury. He was walking around after the game.
He was actually running up and down the sideline afterwards.
I thought that was a good sign. How about the rotation on defense? There were concerns, questions like why weren't they rotating as much last week? They were rotating early and often. Like Kenyatta Jackson may have been in there on the first drive. Saw Edric Houston going in there.
Was playing inside at times.
And he
Hartford's
did that against Nebraska as well.
Hartford's in at safety.
Yeah, so they were rotating up. Jermaine Matthews was out there. Arvel Reese, of course. CJ Hicks came in on some goal line situations. So they played a bunch of dudes. Even not to jump back over to offense, Bryson Rogers, Brandon Ennis, and Jaden Ballard being on the field at the same time for Brandon Ennis' touchdown.
Yeah, I don't know if Mika's watching, but shout out to Mika, who was talking about how Brandon Ennis needed to be a big part of the game, and we kind of went, well, who are you going to take off the field? And then
who else was out there on that play? But it was Ballard and Rogers.
Yeah.
And talking to Brandon Ennis after the game, he said he knew that was going to be a touchdown. Obviously they had worked on it in practice, but once it was man coverage and they called it, he's like, well, this is going to be a touchdown. Very excited.
Mozart Go says Caden McDonald coming in and holding it down on the big goal line stand.
That's what he does.
For sure. And we have a super chat from Erwin Lichtenberg on the TV broadcast during replays that got to a rules expert each for this game. He was like, I got nothing for you, which I am so interested to rewatch this game because there were a bunch. They would like click the replay back and forth, which generally is you assume the home team video board guy saying, haha, the call should go our way. And one of the times they were doing that, it was when Tyler Warren was blocking another receiver. And it was like, well, that very clearly was not pass interference unless you want to call it on the offensive guy for hitting the other offensive
hit his own guy.
But they would click it back and forth. So, and the camera was terrible here. I don't know why, but not great. So anyway, Mike Freno says wants to shout out Burke, was real upset after Oregon with him, but he might have saved the game, forcing Warren out on that long run.
That's a great point. I stopped him there at the 2, and every inch counts. And he's got to bounce back against Nebraska. He gave up a touchdown, but that happens. and he's full of confidence. The coaches have reiterated, and they've continued to support him. So I don't think they're worried about his confidence waning. The sophomore year that he had, I think he bounced back well from that last year. He bounces back pretty quickly, and I would expect him to continue this trajectory. But when you're playing against good receivers, you're going to get got at times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And really with this, Penn State's receivers are what they are, so it's to the occasion. And yeah, that touchdown saving tackle was literally a touchdown saving tackle.
Yeah, for sure. Fox Body Blue says not 15 quarterback carries, but 8 to 10 is necessary.
No, 3 of those are sacks.
Yeah, they didn't run the quarterback very often, and there was one in the second half that was. There were a couple times that I was like, oh, here comes this. Like, you used to be able to do that with Urban Meyer, and it was like, okay, here comes QB power, put the guy in motion. Okay, now except it always worked with Urban Meyer. This time it was kind of like there were a couple times today, and we still need to get back to that pick six. But there were a couple times. There was a run where it was in the second half, and it was kind of like, this feels like where they're going to run a Will Howard little sweep and
to the right,
and
down by the end zone.
And Penn State very much was of the same mind there. But yeah, that was not. I thought they used Will Howard a good amount in the run game, not too much. You can't run him 15 times because he's not that dynamic, and also they figure it out after a while. But they used him enough. The threat of running Will Howard 15 times probably helped out quite a bit with opening things up inside.
Well, and we didn't see him keeping the reads last week, and he did a couple times this week. So he had 9 rushes in this game. A couple of those were scrambles, but a couple of those were called runs. A couple of those were reads and effective keepers, and picking up, keeping it on first down, picking him up first down, and just resetting everything. I thought that was effective. I don't know that we'll see him carry the ball as much next week against Purdue. I would. I think this is what you would expect.
Yeah.
Moving forward against matchup opponents.
Yeah. We have a couple here. Do we have any more?
17 in the queue.
Okay, do we have super chats left?
No, we're
okay.
good on super
Okay, so we're caught up on super chats. Let's talk real quickly about the pick six. We haven't talked about that yet. That one, I am not the world's greatest football mind. I do get to talk to Ross Fulton a lot, which helps on that front. But on that play, they had a stacked formation. It was 2 receivers. It was Emeka Egbuka right in front of Jeremiah Smith, split out on the right side, and it was 3rd and 4. And I looked at that and I said, well, I bet I know what they're going to do. And I will show my work on this. I tweeted a couple things real quickly about it, just from the sideline, didn't have the photos yet. I have a photo of the stack formation, and I have a photo of the moment the ball gets intercepted, because guess what? I knew where the ball was going. And guess what? Penn State also knew where the ball was going. You can't tip off, like, very clear. You have this guy who is a phenom, and you have this, like, oh, well, we're going to run a special formation where you have a blocker. What do you think is going to happen there? Like, Penn State knew, Penn State jumped it, and then all of a sudden you're down 10-0 just a couple minutes into the game.
Yeah, Zion Tracy read that the entire way, and it was
same.
It was behind the receiver as well a little bit, but that didn't matter. I mean, it was,
that made it a more difficult play than it would have been otherwise.
So that one felt like it was clearly predetermined, and it was, I'm throwing this no matter what. He never saw Tracy, and and my thought at that point was like, well, the 1 to 2 plays that we always talk about, that and really it's not 1 to 2, it's 2 to 3. I think, and it's like, well, if you get rid of this early rather than having something later on down the road,
it's like the chicken pox. Could have get it later.
Exactly. Just have a whole party of let's get it out of our system right now, and so he's still doing that, but he was able to do enough to win the game, and he ran effectively. I thought he completed 2/3 of his passes.
Yeah.
They didn't. This was another game, real quick. Like, they were trending towards only having about 50 plays in this game after 3 quarters, but then they just kept it with that final drive to help push those numbers up.
Yeah. G. Scott was questioned about G. Scott in there. He got banged up. Jelani Thurman, boy, I did not have enormous play. Was that a 4th down play or 4th down play? It was like 4th and 1 to Jelani Thurman, which that was, if I'm remembering right. Yeah. I think they only credited him with 1 reception. It could have been about 3 because he didn't catch it cleanly. But I think if I'm remembering that play right, that was a really fantastic play by Will Howard, because he had to avoid the rush and then he had to kind of feather it over the defender that was in front of Thurman and in front of the defender. I mean, that took some touch. And Thurman, oh boy, I'm glad for Jelani Thurman that Jelani Thurman caught that ball.
Yeah. Well, and we'll get. I want to go back to that, but Will Howard feathered one into Jeremiah Smith that he bobbled too. For another, but that fourth down play,
I'll make sure.
Ohio State lined up. Penn State calls a timeout, and as said to Kevin, like I wonder if now they've given Ryan Day enough time to call a play action.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And then it it looked like the first read was going to be to the running back, and then the second read, as you said, Will Howard had to avoid the pass rusher, and then just perfect throw, and you're waiting, and it's there's some concern there.
Yeah,
Mike
Farino had some of that concern. He says, I was thrilled with the fourth down play call, didn't love the bobble.
Well, they didn't call the bobble.
Yeah,
just so you know.
Yeah, well, the old Brian Hamby play, but with one fewer bobble and one more catch.
With the whole leave no doubt and the being aggressive, we have seen Ryan Day be very aggressive with fourth downs this year, and not just going for it. They've done that. They've continued to do that, but throwing the ball in that situation and completing it. Penn State throws it, doesn't necessarily get it. So they're not just being aggressive, but they're also executing.
Yeah, Erwin Lichtenberg says still would like to have connected on a few of those deep balls.
Yeah,
I'm sure we all would have. They almost connected on the one to Jeremiah Smith. I don't know if they should. I'm sure they showed the replay, but I have a photo of the ball on his hand, and
he stopped running on that one.
Did he?
Yeah, and then he had to kind of pick it back up. I my thought was because the timing they're always having to wait on the deep passes. So I think he started to wait prematurely, and then he had to pick it back up again. But he still could have caught it. I don't know why he only went with one hand, other than he's Jeremiah Smith, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say
why would he need a second.
I'm not going to tell hey Junior, two hands. I'm not going to tell him what to do.
He's only also, a freshman, not a junior.
But Will also missed Carnell Tate, which would have been a walk-in touchdown.
Yeah, and that was too far out of bounds. Yeah.
So he got wide open on that one. He got behind the defense. So those are two that you'd really like to have back. That could have. I don't know if they ended up scoring on either of those drives, but you want to see them continue to connect on those. They didn't take a bunch of shots after that either. It was just a couple of deep shots in this game.
But
they're running the ball. So
they did right in the most surprising development of the game. They were running the ball well, and man, that last drive. Let's talk about that last drive for a minute, because that's one that the combination of the goal line stand and the drive to seal the game. That's the stuff that Ohio State fans have been talking for years about. This team isn't tough. This team can't do, a big moment. This can't, yada, yada, yada. They got the stop on 4th and goal to 1, thanks in part to James Franklin. And then 1st and 10 from the 1 yard line, 4 yards on a quarterback keeper.
I think they're averaging about 3 yards on sneaks this year.
That was when I kind of went, because that's more than you expect to get on the quarterback keeper. Quinshon Judkins up the middle, 9 yards. Quinshon Judkins up the middle, 6 yards. Quinshon Judkins up the middle, 15 yards. Trevion Henderson to the left, 6 yards. Quinshon Judkins up the middle, 2 yards. Will Howard keeper to the left, 3 yards. Trevion Henderson rush up the middle, 7 yards. Trevion Henderson rush up the middle, no gain. Will Howard rush to the left for a gain of 7 yards. Kneel down, end of game.
Only 2 third downs on that, and Will Howard picked them up both on the run because they're 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3. Other than that, big chunks of yards, keeping the ball moving, staying way ahead of the chains.
Yeah.
And even though, and the thing, Penn State knows they're running, and it didn't matter.
Yeah,
and they were getting
James
good yards.
Franklin talked about that they're going to run the ball. That's what they're doing. There was no, obfuscation. There was no trickeration. It was just, we're going to run the ball. Can you stop it? And the answer was no. 11 plays, 58 yards, 5:13 off the clock. When there was they got the ball with 5:13 left and ran out the clock. And when they did that, I mean, first of all, he slid to end the one run, but they knew this was coming. And they went to he slid at the Penn State 40. They would have had 1st and 10 at the Penn State 40. If they needed to kill another 5 minutes, they probably score another touchdown. And it's like one of those old school Navy drives where it's 18 plays, 99 yards, and they chew 14 minutes off the clock.
like 18 plays, 98 yards, no points, clock runs out, and they just leave it at the 1 yard
We're going
line.
to talk about the red zone failures.
I did see another super chat in there from Mike Frito.
Okay. Mike Freno says a lot has been said about the job Jackson and Hinsman did, but shout out to Fryer and Tegra. Didn't notice them at all in the game, which is great. Yeah, and while you're shouting at the other four guys, Seth McLaughlin, did they have any false starts?
No.
I mean, no false starts,
Yeah,
no
they
procedure penalties.
Right. Yeah.
That was,
And Penn State had some penalties in
Penn
the
State,
first
yeah,
half.
Penn State. I think Abdul Carter was offsides on one that I thought might have been a Donovan Jackson false start. It's not. That is Carson Hinsman and Seth McLaughlin, who have really not played next to each other. They were doing the silent count. Seth, and if you don't know how they do silent count, you've got the left guard kind of looking behind him, and the quarterback lifts his leg, and then the right guard just kind of like slaps the center on his leg or on his arm, or I think it's his leg, and then he knows, okay, you can snap the ball. There's lots of ways for that to not go well. With an offense that, an offensive line that's reshuffled again, loud, hostile crowd. There's a lot of ways for that not to go well, and they just did it all game long. That should not go without comment.
No, and in terms of the right side of the line, so many of the effective first down runs, the first half runs, the long Quinshon Judkins for like 22 or whatever, those are all happening on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
They were using those guys, and yeah, as long as you don't notice them, then that's pretty good, and they were effective. I think the offensive line leaves this game feeling extremely confident, wanting to build on this, and looking forward to next week's game. Like they want to play right now, and just continue this momentum. Because if you can run for 176 yards on Penn State when Penn State knows that it's coming, then that bodes well for what else you can do, and then start mixing into play action and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I saw a great thing that Kevin put in there. Far be it for me to compliment Kevin, but a great factoid that Kevin threw in there. Per Matt Zenitz, Jim Knowles, the first defensive coordinator since 2021 to hold an Andy Kotelnicki offense without a touchdown. He did it by this much, but he did it.
Still counts.
This much twice, but he did it.
Yeah, no, impressive. And this is another one where the defense is going to come out of here with such confidence as well. But I think what they need to do is, you were feeling one way or the other before the Nebraska game. You can't come back out like that anymore the rest of the season. You've got a few games left, couple games, 3 games in Ohio Stadium. You can't just be, you can't be celebrating this win past today.
No. Well, and that's what Ryan Day always says. We're going to go enjoy this one tonight, and then tomorrow it's on to Purdue. Now, how excited are they to move on to Purdue? Well, probably going to be a different game. And here, let me also throw this out there. The approach against Nebraska last week was not super aggressive. They did not get into their bag very much last week. This week, they did. Next week, you probably don't need to get too much in your bag. So if it looks a little more basic, uncomplicated, whatever you want to call it, recognize that is probably the reason why.
Oh, look at that score. 4-10.
Florida 10, Georgia 3, 7-22.
How did Miami do?
They ended up winning by 20, 53, 30
What?
something.
UCLA 13, Nebraska 7. Nebraska, please, Nebraska, don't do this. Just get your stupid bowl streak. End the bowlless streak. I am absolutely begging you. Oregon 21, Michigan 7. Indiana has regained control of that game in the brass spittoon game. They're up 21-10 now on Michigan State. They were down 10-7 not that long ago.
Good for them.
All right. One interesting factoid here.
Yes.
Jeremiah Smith touchdown streak did get broken. That's
why I said they should have play action on that last drive.
Just for
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing you definitely want to do. Like take a real unnecessary risk. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can only set a record once.
That's true.
So yeah, he ends at 7 games in a row, falls short of joining Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison as the only Buckeyes to ever catch touchdown passes in 8 consecutive games in a season.
I will point out that he has 2.5 more seasons to.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
This was not a beginning of your career streak record. He already has that one.
So he did break Chris Carter's season, freshman season receiving yardage record. So he's already got he's tied Chris Carter with the touchdowns, right? 8. And
Yes,
so
I believe so. Yes,
I think he's going to do it.
Always the optimist, Tony. Erwin Lichtenberg says, thanks as always, gents. Go Bucks. Thank you, Erwin. We appreciate it. Do we want to get through some of the questions that we have stacked up now? All right, let's start rolling. Mateo en fuego. That means Mateo on fire. This team showed their senior leadership and experience in big games. Proud of them boys today. The total team effort was real today.
Yeah, I think the game at Oregon, which was a heavyweight fight that had two teams executing throughout. So that that Ohio State team comes out of that game thinking that they are now battle tested. Not that they weren't before, but they've come out and they've got more confidence, or they know what is needed in games like this one, and they brought it. And the seniors did it, as you said, but also the freshmen, the sophomores. Like, there are a lot of people making plays in this game. So Brandon Innes leaves this game feeling more confident. Bryson Rogers, Jaden Ballard getting in there. So I think everybody leaves this game. I think that's one of the reasons why Ryan Day was so emotional. It sounds like in the post game, because you were tested, you responded, and this is the next time they'll be tested. They can rely on this. They can go back to this, and they can say, well, we won this one. They lost the Oregon game.
Mm-hmm.
They won this one. 2 games on the road, better result here for Ohio State, and the next result, we'll see.
Well, and there was a stat earlier in the year that Georgia was about to become the first team to play 2 top 5 games, like matchups of top 5 teams on the road in one season since 1996. Ohio State just did that too. Georgia split their 2 games. Ohio State split their 2 games. If you split 2 games on the road against top 5 teams, guess what that makes you? Probably a top 5 team. I think that's one of those things where everyone lost their minds after last week's game, because everything was going to be terrible forever, and nothing was ever going to work ever again. It turns out the Ohio State team that has been broadly projected as a top 5 team by literally everyone in the country is probably a top 5 team.
Well, not only that, I heard they are now the betting favorite again to win a national championship.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a conversation about the rationality of markets and how much things needed to swing on a game where you have, why did they leave is my question. And yeah, it's probably you lost your left tackle. And did you replace your left tackle to the degree that now they're clearly every bit as likely to win as before? Probably not.
Yeah.
But so there's probably a little bit of a rationality of markets conversation to have there, but we don't need to have that today. Everyone's in a good mood.
That's a Monday show.
Let's instead talk about the fact that Cody Simon had 10 tackles and a sack in a big moment. Sonny Styles, 9 tackles. The linebackers, we talked about all the different stuff that has been real consternation for a long time, and looked like a strength in this game, in this very big road spot. Offensive line, running game, add the linebackers, add the defense on the whole, add the pass rush. I mean, I don't know if the questions are answered forever, but there was a response from pretty much all of the big areas of concern. That has to be even more so than just the top line, hey, you won the game. That, I think, is maybe the thing that Ohio State fans should feel best about right now.
Yeah, for sure. First, the win. Feel best about that.
Yes.
But we also know you don't always feel good after a win. Hence, last week.
Yeah.
So you got the win. You answered questions. You answered your concerns. You feel better about the offensive line than you did before. You leave this game thinking this offensive line, I'll say you don't need a great offensive line to win a national championship. You just need a good one, and you need to execute when the time comes. And so can this offensive line be good? I mean, they look like they could today. And so this is the proof. This is the only proof that we have so far of what this offensive line can do. But they didn't. I'm not leaving this thinking, oh, they're in trouble.
No.
I'm leaving this one thinking, okay, this looks like it'll work.
Right. That felt like you walked away from that thinking, okay, they may have found their answer to what was the single biggest question around this team. And that's definitely. Rick S. says, yes, the speed option was a good weapon today.
Penn State got out leveraged several times on that speed option, and they picked up some good yards. And that's something that they're going to look back and kick themselves for. But also that's something else that Ohio State can continue to do. And that's Will Howard's legs a little bit. That's outnumbering the defense more than anything and getting the ball out quickly and then going from there. So yeah, we'll continue to see more of that. I'm waiting for the triple option though. So.
Well, listen, you know me. I've been waiting for that for years. Odysseus says, "Who won bold predictions?" Well, that's a great question.
I almost won it. For sure that 3-pointer that almost happened.
So I hit the one on Quinshon Judkins. I did not hit the one on Will Howard. Jaden Fielding makes every field goal he attempts. Yes. Joe McGuire averages 45 yards per punt. Yes. He did not have one that was inside the 20. The little stupid thing that you added right at the end got me.
That's why we add it. You got to read the fine print. So.
Caleb Downs inside season high of 3 impact plays.
I don't think that happened.
No. 0 receiving touchdowns for Jeremiah Smith. Yes, but he scores exactly 1 on the ground. No. And Caleb Downs interception. No. And Tyler, what did I have? Caleb Downs punt return for a touchdown. No. So I got 1 plus the freebie.
Well, let's see.
It's holding on. Yeah, it's fine.
I don't think 2 non-running backs combined for 51 yards rushing. They came close. I did not get any tight ends out gaining. I don't think I ended up with anything. I'll have to see how many of the 4 players that are made a play equal to their jersey number. I don't think that happened either, but there's time. We'll have to review it. We'll go back to we've got to send this to the home office in Tahlequah, and we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. So the answer, Odysseus, is that I won.
We don't know.
Ted said that I don't think Donovan made himself any money today. Just proved he's slow. Hinsman did great at guard, though. I don't think that's the takeaway I would have here. I mean, is he going to be a top 5 pick at tackle next year? No, but if you can show that you can play there with with a week of notice, that's the kind of versatility I think NFL teams are going to look at as a positive. Like he's not going to be a top 5 pick at tackle. He was never going to be a top 5 pick at tackle. He's a guard at the next level. But if you can also play tackle, that's good. So he's the NFL piece. Like great, sure, yeah. The Ohio State piece, that is a great, Carson Hinsman and Donovan Jackson stepping up in that way, in that moment, in this game, that is enormous. That is a huge response from both of those guys.
I don't think Ohio State fans should worry about a player costing themselves money in the NFL. They should worry more about, does this help my team? And if it does, then be happy with that. And the NFL is going to look at this and see a guy that is being selfless and understanding that that's a guard playing tackle. So we're not going to grade him harshly for that. And surprise, he got beat by a defensive end that's going to be playing in the NFL in a year or two anyway. So like it's short notice, and I don't know that you could have asked for better. You can always ask for better. I don't know that you could expect better than what you got today.
The Elite Academy says here, eating crow, pissed at the missed scores inside the 5. Ohio State made the plays when it matters.
How much
in my head I had forgotten. I had one of my bold predictions was 2 empty red zone possessions.
That's right, you did, and I took it away.
You took it away.
Yes.
Well, you still lost, so it's fine.
Yeah, I do wonder where this loss ranks for Penn State fans in terms of where does this Ohio State loss rank with the other 9 or 10 that James Franklin has? Because this is the
one with the 2-score fourth
lead.
This is only a 2-score first quarter lead.
This is but I mean it's 10-0. What, 5 minutes into the game? Maybe not even. But they scored. Oh no. Yeah, sorry. It was 5:37 left in the first quarter because that first drive was so long. You're up 10-0. 5:37 left in the first quarter, and it was like, oh boy. Well, Ohio State needs to play just about perfectly from here on out if they want to come back and win this game. And they didn't play perfectly, but they played pretty darn well.
They started to dominate, and it's 14-10. You're like, and then they're driving to make it 21-10.
Right.
And I think that provided everybody with a bunch of confidence that even if this does get close, they have seemingly been able to answer the call. And I think at halftime I tweeted out, Buckeye fans, how you feeling? And the majority were feeling pretty good, even though it was, a 14-10 score.
Yeah.
It felt like more than that. But then when you've got Penn State driving to tie it up or whatever, and it starts to feel like Ohio State missed opportunities.
Mhm.
They could have stretched us out, and now it's about to be a tie game again. Then anything can happen, but the defense said, no, we're not going to do that, and
No.
they made plays.
I think there have been Penn State games where Penn State has maybe felt like they were an equal or better team to Ohio State and they've lost.
Yeah.
This one, I think Ohio State was pretty clearly the better team today, but that just makes it's a different kind of frustrating because you had a winnable game against probably a better team and you had some real James Franklining in some big moments, and the crowd was very loud at the beginning of the game, and then you've been in stadiums where you get the here we go again feeling.
Yep.
By the time the middle of the third quarter rolled around, the student section was still loud, and all the fans, all the grown-ups on both sides of the stadium were kind of boy, here we go, and like sitting. Not, the student section's waving their pom-poms. Everyone else is sitting. Everyone else is just kind of, you could just feel the crossed arms and frowns on people's faces. Like, oh, well, we know what's going to happen. And guess what? It happened.
Yeah. The guy I walked out here with was, an older gentleman, and you could just see, like, I've seen this 1,000 times before. And it's like, this is what they expected. And I think that's why they're just sitting, or they're just like, accept. This is acceptance, because this was expectation, and it's like, why would you expect anything else? You can hope, but then you see this, and it's like, well, this was how it usually goes, and it's how it went again.
Yep.
This was a rough one for him.
Bob Woods says, just finished my humble pie. Hats off to Fry, the offensive line, an even day. Let's hope it lasts till the end. Go Bucks. And I think there were a lot of people who had kind of written things off, and I was not expecting.
Bailey said it in drafts.
Yeah, well, that was not exactly the game I was expecting. I'm not going to say like I think they're going to run the ball against Penn State. I don't want to say that, but also like we've been saying for multiple weeks now, like, hey, there's plenty of season left. Look around the nation. I don't think there is a dominant team. Literally the number one team in the nation beat Ohio State by that much, by 1 second and a slide and an offensive pass interference call. And yes, there were other things earlier in the game, and the Will Kazmarek fumble, like yada yada yada. We get it, but that's everyone who was telling me the last couple of weeks this is a results business and the results aren't there. Well, now you have the results, so okay. There is not a dominant team in the nation right now that is just steamrolling everyone. So,
no. Well, I will say Oregon is steamrolling Michigan 28-10 at the half. Michigan's
are they
touchdown.
playing the 2023 Michigan team?
No.
No?
Michigan's touchdown drive, 5 plays, 28 yards. So there must have been something hinky there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh yeah, boy, five. Michigan's touchdown. Yeah.
304 yards of total offense for Oregon, 111 for Michigan, and Oregon has a turnover. So 15 first downs in that first half.
Do you think they're go booing yet? I think they might be.
They might be go booing
Great
right now.
moments in social media. And Jason Manley says props to the offensive line and Carson Hinsman at guard. Ride this hot hand.
For sure.
I have a feeling they will be.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said earlier, the offensive line wants to get right back at it and just continue this. And I'm sure Quinshon Judkins does as well, because this was the best game he's had in a few weeks. Right away, he had like his longest carry that he's had in the past 3 games, and then just continue. And it was like a 12-yarder. So to tell you how things have been going for him. So this is good to see for him against one of the top 2 defenses they've played this year. So that's a confidence builder for him as well. And he got his first start as a Buckeye.
And he averaged 6.8 yards per carry while having a long of 22. You didn't have the 85-yarder in there to skew those numbers. Almost had 100 yards on the ground on just 14 carries. That was – I remember us talking on the team arrival show on Friday night. Someone asked us how many runs, how many rushes are, and we talked about like, I don't know, 10 each, 12, 10, 9, 15, 12, 10, and it ended up 14, 12, 10 for the 3. So, I mean, that's about right.
And Emeka got 2, which we had talked about, they need to do more of. And so he had a good run there on the first down, I believe.
Mike Farino says number 2 is currently down by 7 to a team that might not make it to a bowl. So, Lagway's out for just now.
In the last few minutes.
Okay, yeah, there is not an unbeatable juggernaut out there this year, and I'm sure there are teams that Ohio State fans are going, well, I hope they don't have to play that team. But guess what? There's a lot of teams going, I hope they don't have to play Ohio State.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's most teams in the nation. Actually, there are not a lot of teams that other teams would rather play. Like, you'd rather play Ohio State than this team. Like it's a small list, and it may be a list of like one.
Yeah. Jordan B says, I forgive IGB for every single pass interference after that interception. He had a big play earlier. I was third down, I think, where he went up and made a nice play in the ball. And I thought, I saw a flash of yellow. I thought, he just got dinged. And it was his mouth guard. He has a yellow mouth guard. And it was like, okay. And then you watch the replay, and he was there, but didn't make the forcible contact that gets called. He was there right on time, made a nice play. That's it. That is a guy who, again, so many of the guys that people have been griping and complaining about for weeks, and in some cases rightfully so, stepped up and had big games when they really needed
I
to.
thought it was interesting that on that third down, Penn State was like, you know what, let's go get us a pass interference and throw it at number one. And he's like, no, I'm just going to break it up and go.
Apparently, sir, you have forgotten about the massive anti-Penn State Big Ten conspiracy.
Well, yeah.
I bet Twitter was fun. I bet Twitter was fun during some of the replay reviews and all of that.
I don't know that I would disagree with any of the replay reviews. I know Penn State fans are not going to be happy with most of them, but I don't know that there was anything that I would say they got wrong, other than the fact that I believe Will Howard fumbled the ball into the end zone, but there's no angle, there's no crisp angle that showed the ball in going over the pylon for sure. But it's safe to assume that it definitely did. Yeah. But I was waiting for that one to be like, we have no good angle, so let's riot everybody.
Well, I wondered about the pylon cam because
it's it did, it had to. Yeah. But there was no angle showing it definitively. Like there was the fact that it was definitely a fumble at the 2-yard line, went off of his leg and went into the end zone.
Yeah. Jordan B says, I'm on cloud 9 right now. I haven't felt this happy about a win since 2020 Clemson, probably.
Ohio State needed this one. Ryan Day needed this one. The community needed this one, because if they don't get it, even if you're just moderately happy right now, think of how miserable you'd be if they didn't get it, and how, I said before the game, if they lose this, there's going to be 85,000 people in the stands from Purdue next week. Mm-hmm. Now everybody can go back and be happy and get excited for that game and judge that one on its own merits, rather than judging everything else based on what happens here. Yeah. So plenty of reason to be happy. You got a win on the road, as Ryan Day says, top 5 win. That's the measuring stick for anything. Apparently. Yeah. So now you've got one, and this game mattered beforehand, so make sure it matters afterwards too.
Mozart's Ghost says Caleb Downs was in on so many plays. He even covered Tyler Warren when necessary. He has been outstanding. Yeah, this was a game where you brought in Caleb Downs for games like this. You brought in Quinshon Judkins for games like this. You brought in Will Howard for games like this. And all 3 of those guys stepped up and had big games here. Mike Farino says, I was very upset with that fumble ruling, even though it was probably right until they overturned the Judkins fumble incomplete pass. That was one where I had no angle on that, and the scoreboard had no angle on that, so I have no idea what happened on the Judkins.
And they called that incomplete on the field, I believe. And then there I didn't see any good replays on that one, but it was so bang bang. Tom, as we know, it takes at least 4.5 to 5 steps for a receiver to be legally a receiver, because that 4th step, it's not always guaranteed that that's going to qualify as a catch.
Okay. Warpug says offensive and defensive players of the game.
I'm going to go offense. I'll take Quinshon Judkins. He ran hard. He made big plays. Now, yes, he did it behind an offensive line that was pushing dudes and giving him creases. But
classic Tony, taking the glory boys instead of the hog mollies. What about the hog mollies?
You went to the transfer portal, $20 million, blah, blah, blah. But they needed this one from him in a big way. Mm-hmm. As I said, he ran hard. He got upfield when he needed to. He lowered his shoulders, lowered his head when he needed to. Almost had a huge catch on, well, I think a third down or something like that, a second or third down. That would have been a big play. But I will go with Quinshawn just because, he led them in rushing. He ran hard, and they needed it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go with a tie between Carson Hinsman and Donovan Jackson just because
Coward.
They needed it. I mean, they really needed it. And those guys that they played exactly – there are so many ways. If the offensive line looked like it did against Nebraska, we're having a real different conversation right now. I mean, a real different conversation right now. And that was, they did what they needed to do. Defensive side of the ball, I think, again, there's a lot of good choices.
Cody Simon was good.
I'm going to go with Cody Simon. 10 tackles, that sack, enormous play in that moment. That sack that got Penn State off the field. It was back-to-back sacks. I think he had the first one, and then who had the second one? I don't remember who got.
Oh, the sacks. It was JT Tuimoloau and Kenyatta Jackson.
Yeah, and I think you could go with JT Tuimoloau here. You could go with Davis Igbenogson here. There's a lot of good choices. Killer Downs, Lathan Ransom. Sonny Styles played a heck of a game.
Yeah, 9 tackles.
There's a lot of good choices here.
How about special teams player of the game? How about Jaden Fielding? Not only did he drill 2 field goals, he also had a tackle.
Oh, he had a tackle. I didn't see that.
So, according to the stat sheet, he did. So 2 clutch field goals on his part, where one of them, the 45-yard, I'm like, are you sure you want to kick this? This feels like this is going to be bad field position. And, but it was like 4th and 7, 4th and 8.
Yeah, well, and that's another guy who we're talking about. All these guys that have been getting questioned. He's been getting questioned quite a bit, and again, big moment, stepped up.
I feel like Ryan Day had confidence in the way this game was going, that he was like, you know what, if we miss a field goal, that's fine. We'll get it back. The defense will hold, or the offense will be fine. So I think this was an opportunity to build some confidence. And Jaden Fielding's another guy that leaves here thinking, I kicked in a tough environment. He did it in Oregon too, though. He made a key kick there. The Nebraska game, obviously, he threw that one away. You flushed that one, but you walk out of this one again feeling good.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so next up, Mike Ferguson says player of the game is James Franklin. James Franklin's coaching inabilities. Look,
it's an amazing thing where the question was, is Ryan Day going to get over this hump, or is James Franklin going to get over this hump? So now you know the answer on that gravity. There's only so much that James Franklin can do, only so much Penn State can do to overcome that, but also they're probably going to be 11-1 and in the playoffs. Now, how much of a concern do you think they pose to in Georgia, or you throw Georgia against Penn State, is it 30-13, 30-10, 27, because it's going to be in Georgia.
I don't know that. This Penn State team, if they're 11-1, that's just like a 6 seed. They're getting Notre Dame or something. Are they better than Northern Illinois? Probably.
So I think, it's frustrating, but I think they'll shake this off and get back to it, because there is still, as I always say, the reason the 12-team playoff was invented was for James Franklin. And so now go have fun with it.
Brian DeGroff says, Tom, were you in the corner of the Howard fumble? I was down there. I have a photo of that. It's not loaded, so you'll have to. I think I tweeted it out, so you can find it on my Twitter account. But I have a photo of it, but I'm not shooting straight down the goal line, so it's not a definitive angle. But looking at where his feet are and the ball being out, it's to me pretty clear. It's pretty clear that he's the ball was out. So
were you down there for the Igbenogson fumble? Because I saw a photographer get wiped out, and I was like, oh man.
I hope
Kevin and I were like, is that Tom? Please be Tom.
No. I always shoot on the end that Ohio State's coming towards, so I was on the far end of the field. So
gosh, well, maybe next time.
Rusty Jesse says the Innis touchdown was a big deal. All 3 backup wide receivers on the field. Difference between being a team and being on a team and feeling that you're part of a team.
That rotation was all over the place, except for maybe offensive line. I don't know if I saw Austin Sierraveld. I know I didn't see him in there. It doesn't mean he wasn't in there, but they rotated the receivers, the tight ends, of course. But seeing on that play, that touchdown play, I was watching Jaden Ballard, and I'm like, he's in the back of the end zone. I'm like, that's Jaden Ballard. And then I completely lose the football, and then I see Brandon Innes going like, that's Brandon Innes. And then I see 13 down there. You're like, what in the world is going on? And Brian Hartline is rolling through those guys. They didn't play last week. There weren't a lot of snaps, as we talked about before the game. They had more snaps in this one, but they were more determined to get more players out there, clearly. And the fourth down, the fourth quarter, the defense, you rotate those guys. You want them fresh in the fourth quarter. Were they fresh?
They were. And that's let's go right to Mika's question, which is, I guess, more of an exclamation point rather than a question. But
no, this is capitalized, so you got to shout it.
I think everybody would frown upon that.
Yes. Mika says, continue to spread the ball around and rotate. Let's win the Natty and build a dynasty. So proud of this team, especially the O-line. Thanks, guys. Go Buckeyes. Yeah, I think that's all well. And I don't know if Mika was on earlier, but I did give her a shout out earlier for the Brandon Innes call on the Friday show. Here's one from Dave. Dave says, nitpick, the defense played, but I still have issues with the defensive line play on passing downs. Too many times the defensive line loses contain, allowing quarterback runs up the gut or around the edge. You have a much better view of that than I did. I was surprised at how much, and I'm sure Ohio State was as well, how much Drew Aller was doing with his legs, because he I think ran for more than he threw for at least most of the first half.
Well, it was very similar to last week, but yeah, it was like 42 yards rushing in the first half and like 41 or 43 yards passing for Drew Aller. And I think it was, and all of those yards passing, of course, went to Nick Singleton. But the scrambling thing, he has rushed for like 200 yards last year. He's rushed for 100 yards or so this year. Like, he's a guy that is mobile. It's just people think of Bo Prabula as the guy. That guy is the mobile guy, and it's like, well, Aller can do it. And they even ran some read option with him. They were trying to show catch Ohio State off guard. Like, oh, you think he's just a passing quarterback? It's like, no, he will also run, and he did. And then he was like negative 11 in the second half because of sacks and the less effective scrambling.
I'm very surprised at Prabula. 1 for 1 for 4 yards, 1 rush, 0 yards. That's it. Like, he was good last week against Wisconsin, and then we went back to just very small role player.
Yeah, well, and last week was the outlier because they needed him to play. This was what he's been, where 1 or 2 passes a game, and he's out there more for show than anything else. At times, there are times where they were both there's at least one time they were both in the backfield. Like, Prabula was at running back, and Aller was at quarterback, and they stayed disciplined throughout. So credit to Jim Knowles and getting everybody ready, all of the position coaches. I saw OG Wall after the game was very excited, very happy, and everybody was excited for the Davis-Nigbenosin interception. So congratulations going on to Walton and all of the assistant coaches on that one. So, Jordan B., LOL, both of the touchdowns being wheel routes, crossers after Marv, killing them with that last year. We're not seeing as much over the middle stuff with Will Howard as, certainly not CJ Stroud. Like, they're attacking things differently. I think they're still continuing to grow. The short yardage game, the short passing game, we know is going to continue to be a staple. I thought they were going to throw for many more yards today, but when you're running the ball and you're running the clock, like, it was a very balanced attack, 182 yards passing, 176 yards rushing. I think they could have thrown for more yards if they wanted to, but I think they leave here 40 rushes. Like, yeah, you'll take that. That is controlling the game. That is controlling the tempo. That is, you know what? Let's just keep doing this. And credit to Ryan Day for not going away from the run. And like, you know what? I know we're having success and we're having fun, but I'd really like to throw it. Yeah. And Chip Kelly's like, no.
Well, I came in expecting him to throw the ball for a lot more yardage because I didn't think they needed to run the ball. I thought it would be, not 2 yards per carry, but 3.5. I thought that was a reasonable, hey, what's the offensive line going to look like? How healthy are the running backs really? How effective are the running backs really? When you're able to run the ball, that's if they could have every drive be like the last drive of the game, they'd probably do it. I mean, I'm sure Ryan Day would be, hey, can we throw a pass? No.
No passing allowed.
Just keep running the ball down that field.
It's like a double yellow line. No passing allowed.
we're going to pick up a couple more things, and then we have a couple of interviews we're going to get to, and then I have a video we're going to end with from the field at the end that you guys are really going to like. So we'll hang with that for a minute. Question from Odysseus: Tom and Tony, would you rather be an assistant for James Franklin or care for Jim Harbaugh's chickens? He doesn't like chickens? They're a nervous bird. Does he have chickens?
He got chickens a while back. A couple of years ago, they got some chickens. Now he doesn't eat chickens because they're nervous birds, but he loves them because they're sweet, harmless little birds.
Okay.
Unless they have machine guns, then the worms are scared of them. Do you remember that saying?
They're happy warriors.
No, that's the Michigan Wolverines. He said that the machine guns and the worms and the birds. You don't Google that. Just those 3 words, and it'll be like, this doesn't make any sense. And it didn't at the time.
This feels like one of these things.
Of the Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Chickens, descendants of the
Thank you, Jim. We have all watched Jurassic Park. We know this.
Warpug says time to get ready for Purdue. Need to win a convincing game.
It would be nice for them. Well, I mean,
if Ohio State,
they don't need to.
If Ohio State rolls the ball out next week and wins 31-17, there is a certain subset of the fan base that's going to freak out. I don't think it's going to have any material impact on them in terms of the college football playoff.
No, because the Indiana game will, negate everything, but still, like, you would like to continue building confidence, but you don't need to.
They should, and but if they don't have a big game next week, that's not something that's worth. Freaking
they did
out.
not have a big game against Nebraska,
no.
And it didn't have an impact here.
Purdue took Northwestern to overtime, lost 26-20 in OT earlier today. So yeah, that's they should beat Purdue. I don't think you're seeing a whole. I think you're going to see a lot of guys who you didn't necessarily see a ton of today. And you see a bunch of them next week. Kevin said, good point. Be sure to check out our Hungry Hunger Huddle on Altoona style pizza. YouTube.com/Buckeye Huddle. That not yet. Wait. Open up a new tab with that. Maybe we'll get there later. Let's get. We have a couple interviews I do want to get to. Yep. So. We have first up, let's hear from JT Tuimoloau. He had a really, really solid game. Just go pull up his stats here. 6 tackles, half a sack, 1.5 tackles for loss. This was not the 2022 JT Tuimoloau game in Beaver Stadium, but it was a pretty, I have had a lot of people, anytime I tweet a picture of JT Tuimoloau, I get a lot of comments about milk cartons and how, guess what? You saw him today against Penn State at a time when they really needed him. So let's hear from JT.
But there's a lot of communication, a lot of great physicality in there, and I'm proud.
They were undefeated against Penn State. How does that feel?
It feels amazing. But now we got to move on to the next game. After this day, we got to enjoy the win, celebrate it, and we move on to the next game, which is Purdue.
JT, did you see any evidence of this weighing on Coach Day? Just everything. Not being able to win lightly.
Yeah, there's a lot of things on us, and I feel like that just motivates us more because I feel like we understand what we're capable of, and we know what we got to do, and just to be on the long side with Coach Day and this whole coaching staff, man. I wouldn't want to be with any coaching staff ever. These are the guys I want. These guys I love playing for.
JT, Thanks. You've been here for the entire arc of the toughness narrative. Mm-hmm. To finish a game off with not only a goal line stand, but then to watch the offense just completely grind one out there in the last 4 minutes. Yeah. What does that say about you guys that maybe hasn't always been said in the last couple years?
I think it speaks volumes to what our program is about. Toughness, fight, and love. We love one another. When our back against the wall, we understand that our ultimate trust is the brother next to us. And we give it back to offense with no doubt that they're going to just go out there, run the clock out, or even score if they need to. But that's toughness and fight. That I feel like that last drive for last year's for the defense, last year's for offense, put the cherry on top of what toughness is for us.
JT, out of the end zone, top 5 team on the road. What does that say about the defense going forward?
I think it just shows who we are. It shows what the Silver Bullets can be, and what we're capable of. And there's a lot more left in the tank. And I think this is just a preview of what's to come.
The goal line stand without Tyreek. Mm-hmm. What does that say about your young guys that you guys can get?
I think it just shows the leadership we have on this team. We all, Coach Mick always says the important guys are the guys behind you. We got to chase, pace, and pull is the motto we've been saying. So Tylee has been chasing his goals, pulling along K-Max, Ty as well, and just pulling on the young interior guys. And when they get up there, they're not they're not surprised by anything coming their way because they're meant for this moment. They're made for this moment, and I'm proud of them. For all the young guys, from K Mac to Edric to Jason Moore to Katie Curry, Kenyatta. I can go all the way down the list, but man, you guys know what I'm talking about.
So JT Tuimoloau 4-0 in his career against Penn State. No gold pants or anything for that, but still a nice little feather in the cap. Maybe that's what they'll do. Everybody gets a feather in the cap for beating Penn State.
I think I should give out brown pants for how James Franklin manages his games.
I thought that was going to be a Joe Paterno thing. You know what?
No.
Maybe.
Tony, sometimes things work on more than one level.
That's true. Yeah. All right.
All right. So now let's hear from Quinshon Judkins. He had again, very, very solid game. 14 carries, 95 yards, 6.8 yards per carry. Also had a couple receptions, 2 catches, 5 yards. Nothing enormous, but 2 catches, 5 yards, 11 yards after catch. So he had he had kind of been a non-factor for a couple of weeks. You would much rather have him be a non-factor against Nebraska than against Penn State.
For sure.
So here's Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited to see those guys and how they handle adversity and being in a new situation with a lot of moving around. And to see those guys execute like they did today, I was super happy to see how they took and enjoyed the win.
What was Will's emotions, maybe attitude this week?
Yeah, I think with our team and a lot of the leaders that we have, encouraging him and him encouraging everyone else, to keep everyone poised and level-minded and, even if you make mistakes throughout the game, still staying focused on the next play and having that mentality to go out there and just try to execute and do your job.
Quinshon, to be able to grind down a game like that in the last 4 or 5 minutes from the 1 yard line, to do what you guys just did, what does that say about, your collective toughness?
Yeah, big ups to those guys up front, to show how disciplined they are and how much grit they have to go out there and play all 4 quarters. It shows what type of team we are, so I'm super proud of them.
Quinshon, how exciting was it to see you quarterback come back from that pick 6 and really kind of pick things up?
Yeah, definitely super exciting for him just because the relationship we have and knowing what type of player and his capability and what he does on a day-to-day basis. That's nothing. You get an interception, he has a great mindset. So next play drive, I'm super excited to see him go out there and perform.
Just to get the
All right, so that was Quinshon Judkins. I think this is a game that both of those guys should be feeling good about. Ohio State, the coaching staff should be feeling good about. The team should be feeling good about. The fan base should be feeling good about. Yeah, you can nitpick a bunch of stuff, but this was a game that they really needed to win. If they lost, I think let's take one moment and do the counterfactual. They lose this game.
Mm-hmm.
It is bleak in Columbus, Ohio, because then it's you got a $20 million team. You can't even beat Penn State, and this is a good Penn State team. This is a Penn State team that is going to present a challenge for folks in the college football playoff. They're not an amazing team, but it's a good team, and you had to go on the road into a hostile environment, and you had to. Who was it that said take their lunch money? Was that Josh Simmons? I think it was Josh Simmons. You want to go into their house and take their lunch money? I think that was before the Michigan State game. They came into Penn State and they took Penn State's lunch money, and so that they did what they needed to do. You should be feeling good about this.
Enjoy the lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you want to? Okay, so I'll just let you know Tony will wrap us up in a minute, but the last thing you're going to see on this show is I shot just like 6 minutes. It's the last play of Will Howard running, sliding, functionally ending the game. They take a knee once and then kind of running out on the field, and the coach's handshake, and Julian Fleming with some of his former Ohio State teammates, and then kind of the end of Carbon, Ohio. Tony got a good shot of Carbon, Ohio, so you can find that also on our YouTube channel probably later on tonight. Carbon, Ohio, team coming off the field. Carson Hintzman looking at my phone and yelling happily about it. But I want you to take a second about watching the background a little bit, because you'll see Justin Fry giving Donovan Jackson a extended hug. This game meant a lot to these guys, and it meant a lot to these guys in terms of how much time you spend thinking about Ohio State football. These guys are spending a lot more time. It means a lot more to them. This win meant a lot to those guys.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah, and I also have a 6-minute video from the final play to Carbon, Ohio, to walking off the field, so I'll get that up on YouTube later on. But then I got to stand right in front of Carmen, Ohio, where the offensive linemen are all there. Justin Fry is there, Brutus is there, and right in front of Carson Hinsman and Seth McLaughlin and Donovan Jackson. You can see just the joy that they went through. So we will go ahead and wrap up here. If you want to hit the like, we'll hit the thumbs up one last time before we go. We would appreciate that. And of course, continue to follow us and subscribe at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Also, check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a premium member now. Look, things are going pretty well right now for Ohio State. You run the ball like this, more good things can happen. So why don't you sign up now? Become a premium member. We've got stuff going on behind the scenes for you, behind the paywall. Recruiting, intel, X's and O's, all sorts of stuff like that. So sign up, say hello to us there on the message board, presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse and in Columbus. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, Tom. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Will Howard, First Lieutenant, Ohio State. Second down.
Good game.
At the end of the game, the final score, Ohio State 20, your Nittany Lions 13.